I was muted. Darn it. Oh, no, it's recording. It's that time of the. It's that time of the week. It's that time. It's that time to wake up and think clearly. Think. Uh, what does thinking clearly involve? Does it require thinking logically? I think, therefore I am. Wait, is it? Yeah, okay. I gotta change. I gotta change buds. Hmm. The ones I have on are we. we okay. Hmm. Oh, there. Hmm. Hmm. Oh. So does thinking clearly require thinking logically? Mm. What is it to think clearly? Clearly, I I don't know. It just sounds good. Clear as in pure, as in that. Well, what makes sense is seeing clearly. Seeing clearly means that what you're seeing, you clearly know what that is. Now, thinking clearly, if we could think of thinking as a perception, what you're thinking, you you think you know what it is. So, thinking logically involves something else. Something else like in the statement, I think, therefore I am. There's a statement, I think, and there's a conclusion, therefore I am. Oh, I got an alarm coming up telling me to wake up and think clearly to start the meeting. Starts in 10 minutes. Oh, good. See, in 10 minutes it'll be 7. That's when the show starts. So I don't know. I better get ready for the show. Maybe you could put this over here. Wait. Oh, what happened? Oh, that was my hand. Oh, I'm covering the camera. Okay. Let's see. Here's a good spot. Mm. There we go. I'm gonna test to see if it's sounding good with a join a meeting. Let's see. 407 66. Join. Mm. Oh, someone's knocking at the door. That's me. Got it. Mm. Here we go. Some echo. Some echo coming up. Recording in progress. Okay. Hello? Hmm. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay, here. This on mute. Hello? Oh, yes, I can hear myself. So, these earbuds, they're Motorola's, I forgot what they are. I don't know. I don't think you can find them. They're Verve Buds 800. Motorola Verve Buds. They're okay. Hmm. So, with that one? Yeah, that one. Not this one. Not not this one. But that one. That one. Which one? That one. That phone. So I'm talking these Verve Buds connected to that phone. So it's picking up what I'm saying. Then I can hear it right here on this phone. I can hear it. It's a little delay. There's no echo. And I got this phone muted. So that means it doesn't come from my speaking into this phone. It's coming from me speaking into the buds, going to that phone, broadcast live via satellite, via Zoom, going up to the satellite. Well, maybe not. Doesn't have to. It goes on the internet. It could include the satellite. So the result is see I see this image right here. I also see myself pointing to the phone. So I can't hear through this one, but I can hear on this phone what what's coming out this big picture, right? Coming from that person. When I have this muted, I can't hear what's coming this camera. I can hear what's coming from this big picture. The picture that's showing me at a distance. You can see my bedroom. I got a yeah, it's fixed. That camera is fixed. It's on a pedestal. Yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to think clearly, more importantly, or I am trying to emphasize that I'm thinking logically to figure out where my sound is coming from. It's not from the phone I'm holding. Well, I can hear it through the phone I'm holding, but it comes from me talking and the earbuds picking it up, going to that phone, and then get sent on the internet with the picture that I see right there. Then I hear it on this phone delayed. So I say something and then I hear it about maybe a quarter of a second later, which is amazing. So I hear it on this phone, quarter of a second later. Ha! So it sounds almost like an echo at one time. Ha! And then maybe it's not a quarter, maybe it's a half a second. Huh? Pretty quick, but not so quick. Hmm. So what happens if I unmute? Okay, unmuted this phone. So is there echo? Maybe if I put it over here. No? Or maybe if I go over here. Hello, hello. I'm trying to produce an echo. Okay. Maybe there's an echo there now. Maybe it because I have this, I don't produce an echo. That's pretty amazing. Well, maybe I am producing some echo that I don't hear too well, but I'll leave it muted over here. It should be enough to get the sound to hear. Or unless maybe I have to get close to this and say something. Hello? Are you hearing me? Through this phone? Hey. Oh, maybe. I was checking to see if this one was on Bluetooth. It's not on Bluetooth. What else do I know? Uh, it's not using more. Oh. We have a special guest today. We have Dominic Tersingi, who who has a podcast coming up next day, tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. The topic will be in, being in the world and not of the world, something like that. So thanks, clear thinker Dominic, for coming to this podcast where we try to wake up and think clearly.
Hey, Joe.
Hey. And so, did I get that right? Do you have a podcast coming up tomorrow?
what is actually a definition of a podcast? Like I know it's a Zoom meeting, and
It's a Zoom meeting. Yes, it's a Zoom meeting.
hmm,
I don't know. Podcast sounds exciting. It's
is
in.
is a podcast something where people like do like a book, or it's a soul talker? Or because I know there's like things where people do like debates. That's one thing, but I don't know if that's a pod. Well, I guess it could be a podcast. But anyway, either way, it's a Zoom meetup. It's gonna be done on Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard the word webcast.
Yeah.
Webcast.
Mhm,
Maybe this
mhm,
is a webcast. We're casting it on the web.
mhm. Well, I hope it's for me like here, Jaro. It's an interactive. People are going to interact and play with the
Oh,
ideal of, like in
it's
this
an
case,
interactive meeting of the
yep,
minds.
yeah, and yeah, mine. I heard the other day there, even when people talk about feelings, it's not really about the heart. It's not from there. It might be stored there, but it's the chemical release that comes from the brain. So, when people say, "Oh, I always lead with my heart," I'm like, okay, but if we're going to take into consideration what people do with biology and science, then we have to play the ideal. Are we saying feelings is with the blood? And I go with the ideal that maybe blood is memory, but so anyway,
Hmm.
back to thinking, Jaro. I think we do a lot of things. I'm coming to a possibility or awareness that when we use the word emotion, energy in motion, it's like the ego. Put a slash between the e and the go. Ego. Energy go. So do we trap energy? I think we do, because this is why we have acupunctures and all that other kind of we'll call it crafts. I'll call it crafts. So this is why we probably have e-commerce, energy commerce. I'm playing with words, obviously. So is there a particular topic that you
Oh,
that you thought of today, my friend?
yes. What you just said was interesting. E-commerce is actually electronic commerce, as in email, electronic
Mm-hmm,
mail.
mm-hmm,
Then there's iPhone, iPad, and all these things that I have that
mm-hmm,
Apple came up with. Maybe that means intelligent and
mm-hmm,
things. But then emotion, it's not electronic motion, it's energy motion,
mm-hmm,
energy go.
mm-hmm.
And so when we have an emotion, does is there or there's probably a logical basis for having it. Like we could have an investigator investigate what emotion we're having. Maybe he could plug us into some electronic brainwave detectors, and maybe you could look at the waves and say, okay, he's having a happy emotion, or oh no, okay, he's having a sad emotion, or whatever way he could detect the emotion, and then he could analyze and see now where did that emotion come from.
Mm-hmm.
So he could say, oh, this emotion came from a previous emotion. So a moment before that emotion showed up, he was sad. And now he's happy. But no, that doesn't make sense. How could a sad emotion cause a happy emotion all of a sudden? So maybe there's some thinking going on that produces the emotion we we produce. So I'm thinking logically there that what causes emotions are our thoughts. But or like when I say I think, therefore I am. So what is that? So we have the thought or the statement, I think, and then we decide, oh, is that true? Yes, that's true, because well, we have to take him for his word that he is thinking. And then he has a conclusion. Therefore, I am. So what does that mean?
I
That
can. Mhm.
because of his thinking, it produced him. Is that true? We have to think logically and decide whether it's true or not. We can assume that the first statement is true, I think. And then the second statement, therefore I am, is the conclusion. So we have to do some logical and critical thinking to determine if the proposition, the argument is true or not.
Joe,
So today the topic is going to be on being logical. How can we improve our our logical process?
well, if we're going to just talk about that, Jaro, you have to learn to meditate, listen. Like I know you talk out loud, and in talking out loud, I think you don't give yourself enough time to actually think about it. To go
Mm-hmm.
back a little bit to give you an insight, when you see the clouds, do you see the energy that's what's called air around it? Now, somebody, if they stop and think about it, they can give their own response. When you see the water and then it transfers itself into clouds and then it goes back into rain or it goes into ice, do you see the air? No. Emotion encompasses everything. Thoughts, feelings. Feelings can come in many different subdirectories, sadness and excitement. So we don't see all the different ways that the emotions can and cannot be. No different that we're like the goldfish inside of water. It doesn't know it's in water, and if it does, it can't see it. So air is energy, and a lot of things that moves are subdirectories of energy, clouds, water, and then within our own vessels we have all those things. So have a rational mind or a comprehension mind. It's still energy in motion. It's just when people say I'm having an emotion and then they associate it to one of its directories, which is a feeling. And within the feelings, you have different kinds of feelings: sadness, anger, happiness. Even the concept of control is an emotion. It's energy in motion. Only thing is, with control, you're either trying to resist or trying to harness it. So now, when I hear you talk out loud, Jaro, you're thinking out loud, but you're doing it in a voice. Sometimes you ask a question. I've kind of known you a little bit longer than most, and I realize you're not really asking a question for others. You're asking a question from within. Now, you could be asking a question, but then you compound it with another question. So if I wanted to say interject this for a minute, just to give my insight out loud on how energy works. We just are very sloppy when we say emotions. Well, because most people think emotion, energy in motion is when you see it, one of its effects, you see your hand moving. A thought is actually emotions. It's energy in motion. You just can't see it. Same with language. You can't see it. Now, we get so caught up that we have to see it in the material that we've been allowed to create, or at least form, or be given a language called a written work. And then if it's not good enough to write it on a cave wall, then we have to actually put it on a tree. And then from a tree, we got to put it on paper. Those are just recordings. Those are all photocopies. But if a person wanted to go inwards and say, I'm very intuitive, I said, yeah, you don't really need the written work or the oral work if you're very intuitive. But if you want to interact with the rest of humanity that have chosen different styles of communicating, you're going to have to learn how to read or write. Let alone if me and you, Jaro, never had to eat. And we're one of those beings that just never had to eat. And in a way we don't, because in a way we are, because there's certain human beings, they never have to eat fish, but they still got to eat. They just don't have to ever eat fish. But if they wanted to interact with other people that in a community eat nothing but fish, then they have to make a decision. Do I eat it just for showmanship? So this is where I've been hearing it recently this week. A lot of ego people talk. People want to debate with each other. They don't want to share their points. They want to force or combat their points with other people. That's a very intellectual person now becoming very clever. They're not really trying to aid humanity's growth. But they are growing. They're actually aiding in humanity's growth in a sense of division. I've proven a point. Last time I remember, all those points are something you just get to experience. You know, this is why we have words like point of view, eye of the beholder. People say stuff to Plato's cave kind of ideal, but they don't really grasp it. They're trying to pull something into something else. They're trying to prove it in a material sense. So anyway, maybe you want to give a layout on.
Oh, I want to explore what you said 10 or 15 seconds earlier.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
That thought, okay, no, that yeah, what is thought? And you put a thought in my thought processor that thoughts are actually just emotions, energy in motion.
Yes, they are. All of it.
So let's explore that.
Okay.
Because I never thought of that. Because I've been trained to think from social media, no, even from YouTube channels that I've listened to, from audio books, from regular books, from conversations, or I've had the impression that when they're talking about emotions, that emotions are somehow different from thoughts. So we have thoughts and we have logical thoughts, and we want to think logically and critically. But when we have emotions, they're dark, they're dangerous, they could lead us into temptation. They have passion, but thoughts, it's well thought out and it's under control. Our mental, intellectual control, and we have it. We have a goal, and we can write it down. But thoughts, they're not written down. They cause our face to change shape. Like when we're sad, we have a sad face. When we're happy, we have a happy face. When we're jealous, we have a jealous face. When we're disgusted, we have a disgusted face. And so we have emoticons expressing all those different kinds of faces. And then we have scientists investigating on emotion. Where do they come from? How are they created? And are there universal emotions that if anyone from any country, any culture in the world expresses sadness or joy or jealousy or anger, anyone else from any culture can say, yes, he's having this. I can interpret his body language, his facial expressions, and determine what he's emotioning.
Okay, if I can intercede, Gerald, your senses, if I can intercede, please, because I get it, Gerald. Whether you really realize or not, you ask a whole bunch of questions. You're trying to find out the source where you're not aware of how you use it, first of all. So I'll give you an example. All your senses are energy in motion. Now, if a person's aware, they'll realize, which one do I use the most? When you read a book, you're using your sight. You might be using your touch when you're moving the pages. When you're looking at media, you're using your eyes. When you're looking outside, you're using it. We bombard one of our senses more than the other. When we're on Zoom, are me and you able to touch each other? Are we able to taste each other? No, we can only hear each other, and we can only basically see each other. Now, I might be able to touch the keyboard, but I'm not touching it close to you. So now, most of the emotions that we use, the energy and motion, are being bombarded more on one. So we're not living a balanced energy and motion. Now, we say things like cause and effect, but where do you see thoughts? You don't. So you're not seeing the cause, where it comes from. You're seeing its effects and its side effects. It's kind of like when you're in a program, Gyro, you have a programmer, you have the sub-program, you have the subdirectories, you have all these different directories. And they all branch off from each other, but you're never going to see the source. And if you do, how would you explain that to other people that are so caught up in the program and they're just guessing that they're seeing the source? So I'll give you an example. People will say, I see the big picture. They're not ever asked certain parts. And they say, well, Dominic, I don't see that. I said, then you're just saying the word, I see the big picture. Everything, Jaro, forget about the essence to things. Everything is energy in motion. Everything. Thoughts, thinking, feeling, reason. The fact that you move your finger prior to moving your finger and you have a thought before you actually move your finger is energy in motion. But if you're only going to respond only when you see the material work, well, then you would have to explain how do clouds come and go. You see it when it's in your eye presence and you see it moving. But what happens when it just disappears, let alone appears? See, this is where most people from birth, forget about all the technology that we grow into. Forget about YouTube. It was way before YouTube. It was way before writing. But it's still energy in motion. We have this ideal as we advance, which we're not. We're just becoming aware of other types of technology, which is lesser than the technology that we're in. No computer will ever be like your vessel. Not a single fucking computer will ever be like your vessel. Now, when it comes about storing information, because we've never taught to work collectively. Now, Siri can get to a point where it can gather all kinds of history information, which is great, but dare not ask Siri, say, how do you feel when you lose something? She'll give you some clinical thought. And this is what you do, because we've been conditioned this way. I give a clinical thought on how am I supposed to respond. Dare not actually have comprehension, let alone receptive will. But most of us get caught up in the concept of free will. And how did that get conditioned into the trained thoughts? Because most people never condition, never question it. So what is free, let alone the will? Let alone, can I not have a receptive will, an intuitive will? Yes. What is the definition of will? You know, these are all different words that we give. But if you could see energy in a form that it gives colors to each one, you would see a person that doesn't speak would have a thought color, no different than anger color. Same with numbers. Am I to think that number one is the only number? No, they're all numbers. Same with all the alphabets. But what am I using with my senses? I'm using my eyes. Now, what is thoughts? Thought encompasses all of that. Now, do you have the ability to train your program to learn how to say the word tree in 1,000 different languages? Let alone, can you color it? Let alone put it in a stick figure. These are all the capability. And like I said, I'm only tapping in. Most people are in awe by Siri, but they're not in awe of themselves. Yeah.
So I'd also like to consider.
You got an echo going on, Jaro.
Interesting. I wasn't before. Now I am. Yes, I did something over here.
I'm just done. I'm okay hearing it. I know you're recording this, Jaro.
Let's see if I can do this. I'll unmute this one. That's this phone. And I'll mute that one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what happens. Oh, how's that? Did that
Yeah.
echo
Yeah.
go away?
It's gone, Jaro. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, that's beyond my comprehension of how that works. Let's see. So I'm talking, and because see, this phone doesn't have Bluetooth to this, and oh, maybe what happened is, oh, it's working. So I had Bluetooth from these earbuds to that phone,
Mm.
and then it was working okay without echo. But suddenly I swiped on this phone, and then it started. I could start hearing what we were talking about on this earbud before I had to put my phone near me to hear. And then heard some echo. So I switched it. I unmuted this phone and I muted that phone. And now that got rid of the echo. Anyway, I found what you said thought provoking. You provoked the thought they, that anything is emotion. And so, but before that, what you said, wait a minute, what if what we see is emotion, energy in motion? Because when I see an object, what's happening when I see an object? There's nothing in my eye that's coming out and hitting the object. There's nothing that we can detect scientifically. But what we can detect is the reverse. It's that the object is emitting light into the eye. So the eye is being passive. It's the object that's throwing light at my eye. Well, if I have it, the eye open, and I'm looking at the general direction, and then, but we don't just see that object, we see the object and everything around it to all our peripheral vision. But then we have to use some emotion to select the object. When we select the object, that's where our emotion, our feeling towards that object begins. That are we're deciding, I'm going to focus on that object and not this object. And there's the moment of the birth of emotion. What do you think?
Well, again, Jarrell, I do hear words. It's not my emotions. I'm experiencing energy and motion. I'll give you an example for me. I just had this. A person's been trained. This is how you can mislead the senses. And when I say the senses, because then with senses, then you have reason and logic and all this stuff. Somebody will see somebody put like a big fan and then put it in front of a bunch of leaves and then blowing it. So they've been conditioned to see that here's a fan. They might get to the point of understanding what electricity is and the cord and all that, but then they see the leaf moving. So they're going to get programmed to think when there's a big fan, the effect that it does on the leaves, it blows it. Now I remove the fan and the person doesn't see that there's no fan behind them anymore, but then they see the leaf still moving. But then I try to explain to them, I said, well, that's called air. That's wind and air. It gives the same effect. They're going to struggle now for most people because they've been conditioned. This is where the first imprint is usually a very lasting imprint. So what happens is, unless you learn how to question things, you question yourself first. You don't question, well, that's wrong out there. No, you question, why do I think that way? Oh, it's a program. So I got to see one example, which is called a fan with electricity blowing the leaf, but now I'm seeing something else. You could do the same thing with water. You can get a whole bunch of water and throw it at the leaves and say, did it still not move it? It didn't move it the same way, but did it still not move it? Well, yes. And this is where people have lost the concept of honest and in pondering, because we've been conditioned to think that there should be an answer to things. Okay, let's play that. Go ahead.
Okay. You say that when we're using a device that produces wind that blows, and you can demonstrate that it's working when it blows leaves around. So the person watching that happen may
all those
conditioned.
examples, sorry, Jarrell, all those examples are actually energy in motion. Some of them are man-made, some of it's nature. But a lot of what you're doing is you're being the observer of those things. People just never question what they're observing. See, for example, you ask questions, but you're not questioning it and you're actually not listening. When you say, I want to meditate, you should be doing that all the time. Meditation just means listen. You should be listening all the time.
Mhm.
Now, is it challenging for most of us to listen all the time? Yes, because not all of us, and including me, aren't gifted. I have moments of listening. So when I hear people talk about words, I'm like, so I'm using the English language. What's the meaning and how are they using that right now? I'm not accusing them that they're wrong. I'm just saying, how are you using that language, that word in that particular example? Now, other people might not worry about the word, but they'll question how they're using it. You said it with a very angry voice. Are you making it personal or are you looking at the words? Because this is where people get caught up or they reveal themselves. Do you think you are the language or are you experiencing the language? Same with the body. Because if you honestly think that's your body, then where do you go when you go to sleep? And when you're awake and you're driving the car, who's running your body? You're so busy using your senses that have already been shown. If you challenge it, it's easy to be misled, let alone misguided, hence misinformation. You can miss a lot of things in life, but yet exist for 70, 80, 100 years, 120 years, and not really experience all the different flavors as a human being. A lot of people live 100 years. They never learn the other 40,000, sorry, not 40,000, maybe thousands of different languages out there. But then they'll say arrogantly, I've lived a fulfilled life. You've lived a very small little existence.
So
Mm.
when when the fan is turned on, it moves, it blows the leaves around.
Mhm.
So I can conclude or infer or get conditioned to believe that when you turn the blower on, that's got to be plugged in and get electricity, and it's designed to do just that. So you're conditioned to that. But then you see that after I turn it on, the leaves stop moving around.
But you're saying,
So,
Jaro, you're saying a word that actually doesn't apply. If you're actually literally seeing the fan blow the leaves around, you're actually not believing, you're knowing now. You might have to believe how the fan works and let alone where the leaves are going to go. This is where we get sloppy in our language. You've been programmed so much, Jaro, you can't even question yourself before you even talk. That's not a belief. That's a
there's a
knowing. Now you might have
there's a
discernment. See,
there's a pause.
as you're interrupting right now, you're validating what I've told you before. You haven't learned how to be teachable. I'm not your teacher. Teachable. Can you question what you just said for yourself? Not me questioning you. That's not my role. And it kind of gets me irritated because it's not my responsibility to help somebody else know them thyself. We can aid each other by, I could share you and I could break everything I just said to you down. But if you're so busy thinking, well, Dominic, I haven't even gotten into school yet, then how are you going to learn? Because you say things like believe. Now, we're playing with ideals right now. So it's not about beliefs. But if you literally saw a fan move a bunch of leaves and then seen some of its effects, where the fuck is there a belief in that? Ponder that. Now, you can have knowledge, you can know about it. But now, if you want to go further, even that, then you can actually have discernment. Why does it do that? How does it do that? Now you're talking about philosophy and science. Most people that talk about science and philosophy don't got a fucking clue what they're talking about. And how I know that is they're not them questioning themselves. They're too busy thinking my point of view is the only view. I said, whoever said they were yours. And then dare not come back from the cave and try to assist other people for allow them to become awakened for themselves. I'm not here to tell fucking other people what to do. That's their responsibility if they have the ability to respond. Most people are too busy reacting. So when you said belief in that, I realize you're just reacting. Now, are you willing to take accountability for what you said? Well, Dominic, I can't believe, it's like seeing a plane fly. Oh, I can't believe that. Oh my God, it's right there in front of you. Now, if you've never heard the word before, plane, that's a different conversation. Dom, I've never heard that word. Can you please explain what that means? I said, well, because I'm using the English language, I'm going to have to give you like a quick overview that it can mean many different things. That's why English is a very cumbersome language. It's not a direct one word means this and that's it. And when nobody's going to question it. This is why people debate each other on how they interpret the language. But they never debate themselves. You know, they're not actually, everybody thinks know thyself is a pleasantry pursuit. No, it's a struggle. Because then you realize you've been bombarded. It's not about pointing fingers to your parents and your community and your schooling system. That's back to the Garden of Eden. Everybody was too busy pointing finger. Oh, it was Eve. It was the serpent. It was God. Leave all those people out of it. Where's your responsibility for yourself? So in that particular case, if you want to be very scientific, Jaro, what's some of the side effects from a fan blowing a leaf? Let alone forget about getting into that very childlike state where do I see those words that I'm describing? But let's say we go with that. We're going to jump halfway into the movies. We're going to use language. And the fact that there's a device called a fan there with electricity. I'm showing you there's these side effects. This is where energy works, whether it's in the cause, in the effect, and all of its side effects.
Mhm.
So now once you realize that, then you start thinking, okay, emotion, energy in motion. But most people only want to see when it's in the physical. They'll ignore the fact that when they're speaking, that's energy too. But I can't see it. So that's not reality. See, there's another sloppy word. What's based on reality? We use it on a constant basis. We're using the description of the word reality when you don't see where the word is. Writing it down and saying it are two different things. The writing down is for recording purposes. So in the old days, when people didn't know how to read or write, they still knew how to talk. Anyway, I went on, Jaro.
Oh, no, that's good. That's a segue into reality. I want to share
Please.
the different ways we think about reality. So I will refer to the Dictionary of Philosophy and Religion, Eastern and Western thought. And so I look up the word reality, and it's very interesting. It made me think. Let's see, real. Let's see what real. Oh, realism. Oh, maybe it's under that. Yes. Oh, here it is. No, that's reason. No, realism. Reality? Oh, reality. Okay, reality. From Latin realitas, deriving from res, a thing, in parentheses, in quotes, thing, res. The term was introduced into philosophy in the 13th century. Uh, indeed, no clear distinction can be drawn between the two terms. The two terms of oh, they were thinking about the a synonym for it is the word being. In so we could think about what's the difference between being and reality. And but what I wanted to get to is the different philosophers over the centuries have defined it different ways. Let's see, the Indian philosopher Nagarjuna, he looked upon reality as beyond intellect, the non-dual absolute in which all distinctions merge. Campanella, another thinker, wrote of a graded reality. Oh, we have Charles entering the room. Oh, Charles. Welcome, Charles. I was sharing what reality is amongst different thinkers. Bear with me. I'm going. Oh, there's 12 thinkers. There's Campanella saying that reality is. Well, he wrote of graded reality, embodying perfections in different degrees, and all things possess the primalities of knowledge, power, and love. And that was Campanella. And
Jaro,
Kant,
okay, Jaro, Jaro, before you go on about a whole bunch of people that are fucking dead, I'm sorry for saying it that way, but
no, I just, I'm
Jaro,
not. Bear with me. I know you're against mentioning people. Okay, I won't mention their
no,
names.
Jaro, hold on. We're talking about reality. If it was written down on a book how you tasted a cookie, would that be reality?
No, but
Jaro,
I
hear me
want
out. Okay, go
I
ahead,
want
Jaro.
to share with you the different flavors of the word reality. So Kant defined the real as that which accords with the material conditions of experience. Fichte held that reality was posited by the ego. Peirce, on the other hand, defined reality as that which is believed by the community of inquirers at the end of an ideal series of inquirers. Bradley held reality to be an absolute which lies behind experience. Oswald, approaching the matter from a side of science, interpreted reality as energy rather than matter.
Mhm.
Freud used the term reality principle to refer to that goal of therapy in which the mature individual is able to forego illusion in favor of reality. Royce viewed reality as a community of interpretation. Lusky regarded reality as an organic whole. Buber suggested that the approach to reality is through the I-thou relationship.
Mhm.
In Romero, views transcendence as the key to reality.
Okay, Chojaro, before you go on, are you going to take all of that information for the next week and study it and then actually make it a worthy conversation? Because Jaro, I could quote all kinds of people. Reality is you cannot actually take an apple and chew it yourself and then write it down and then share it with me and Charles and says that's reality. It's a personal experience. All those guys were tapping on it, but you're doing it again, Jaro. Unless you're going to put in the works, put in 5, 6,000, 10,000 hours of works instead of actually doing like Chum's church sermon and preaching and all that kind of stuff. What you're doing is you're showing intellect without fucking compassion and morals. So now I know we throw around words like reality, love, hate, and all that kind of stuff. And most people might actually be putting the energy with it. So now, in this case, reality is you experience things. That's how most people are going to gauge it
But
on it.
is that your definition or is
It's
that
again, Jaro. You want to bring it down to what somebody else says. I get it. We're using an English language. I don't own anything here. I do not own the experience I have, but I get to
Okay.
experience it. Jaro?
So you said that reality is what we experience. That's one definition, right?
No, I'm Jaro. I'm sharing you mine. If you want to share yours,
Okay,
that's
you're
fine.
sharing your definition, right?
No, I'm sharing you my experience on it,
Or
and then
your
I can
experience of
I
it?
can give it a word. Now, for you, you might not remember that you've experienced a lot of things that's called what some people would call reality. But if you're going to give a platform, it'd be different if we were talking to 5-year-olds and then finally breaking it down. You've been introduced to a word called reality. If you want to do the groundwork and because there's thousands of different dictionary definitions on the word reality. Now, for you to bring in somebody else, I'd be the kind of person I would have a conversation. So share with me how you adapt that for your own personal experience.
I'm sorry that
Yeah,
you
fine.
get frustrated when I bring in others.
No, you go on tangents, which is great, but Jaro, a lot of that stuff you could do that
I'm
on your
sorry
own.
if you get frustrated when I go on tangents, but there is one interesting
Point.
definition
Please
is the
share.
one by Freud
Yeah.
that is interesting because we have psychology that comes from Freud. Well, he's an important figure in psychotherapy, but in according to his definition of reality, he uses the term the reality principle to refer to that goal of therapy in which the mature individual is able to forego illusion in favor of reality. So, so the goal of what Freud was trying to do is to get people to get back to reality as in what's normal. So I find that interesting that that if we were looking at it from a Freudian perspective, we would want reality to be that which everybody else sees it the same way. So it's sort of that means that psychology is a science to try to get people to be normal, to to accept the reality that these scientists have determined is the right way to think about things.
Sure, form another dogma, because you brought in a bunch of other words people can define, try to define, such as the word normal, let alone illusion.
I'm just trying to.
You're clustering it, Jaro. Jaro, you don't realize your skill set. You're cluster fucking the words.
No, I'm just trying to point out that Freud had a different way of.
He's not here.
Reality.
He's not here. You're assuming what other people wrote about him.
He's like the father of a certain way of looking at things. So that when we're looking at an article,
he's not my father. I would probably turn around and say, "Did you actually say that?" If I ever met him, and I would turn around and say, "You're still a child." But that's my view.
What I'm trying to say is that we have to be careful.
No, you have to be careful. I don't give a shit about that stuff, Jaro. Jaro, you're doing it again. I'm sorry, buddy, but you're going on in these tangents. Okay, anyway, I'll just hear you.
But what I'm trying to say is that when we grab the word reality, we have to understand what we're talking about. And so when we're talking about psychology, or if we are psychologists or psychiatrists, we might talk about the patient or the client, and we might say, "Oh, he's not seeing reality right. He's having illusions or delusions. So he's not in reality. So we try to bring him back to reality. But that might not be the definition like a philosopher like Dominic would want us to look at. So I'm just trying to point out the different ways the word reality is used, and so we have to be careful of what we're talking about. Is Charles still here? Wow, Charles.
Hello, Gyro.
You
Hi.
haven't left us yet.
Of course, if I'm my time is free, like it the schedule that you arranged, and if I have the free time, I would definitely attend and listen and probably learn a thing or two.
Thank you for
Yes.
joining us. The topic today was logical or something like that. Being, what is it to be logical? Like the statement, "I think, therefore I am." So we have an argument there. We have a premise. We have a proposition. We have something that I think, and the conclusion is therefore I am. So we can assume that the person that says "I think" is true, is being true. So we can assume that he is thinking, and then the conclusion is therefore I am. So when we think logically, we're trying to determine is the, like as lawyers maybe, we're trying to see if it's true, if it's a valid reasoning, if it's doesn't break any rules, and we have to look at each argument and see if it's valid, and then the conclusion, does it follow? You know what I mean? What would you? Is that something? What do you think of logic? Did you study logic, or how did you learn about logic?
Actually, I didn't have any formal schooling on logic, but I tried to, listen and read on my own. I did have from the university, but after during those times, I wasn't like focusing too much on the logic, but after for some years after I graduated, I did try to apply this logic. I started to have a growing interest in philosophy and in logic. So I guess like I would use logic because in my for me personally, I feel that logic is if I use logic and it's a structure, uh, I might get to the bottom of even if I reach close to the 100% objectivity, it's a tool. So I've been hearing that logic is a language that was developed by philosophers. So, but there are some things that are subjective and cannot be applied by logic. That's what I learned and observed. But the question would be, if reality, how do we know that if what we're seeing, what we're experiencing is, in like a wake up state, or is it like a dreamlike state? So
Mm.
that's two things. I don't know. I don't know if I'm existing in a dreamlike state right now, or I mean, because when we sleep, we have some dreams, and I guess like we could remember them if we wake up during on that stage where we are on the light sleep. But when we woke up during on the what we call the deep sleep stage, I think the science says that we might forget what we dream. So that's why they did provide some tips. If your normal waking schedule is like, let's just say that it's fixed like 7 a.m., you
Mm.
might want to set your alarm maybe 20 minutes earlier. Once you wake up, and then you can remember the dream, then they advise that you jot it down on in a journal. And I guess like those are the
Mhm.
things that people would want to they would want to know what's the meaning of this dream.
Mhm.
And I guess Sigmund Freud came up with his book Interpretation of Dreams, so there are some symbols there, but I'm not sure if that is based on the physical science, or because um, until now I've been hearing or been reading that
Mhm.
psychology or sociology was labeled as soft science. So they said
Mhm.
you can't quantify. Yeah. So that's my share on this part question. And I hope to learn
Mhm.
something else from our talk here and the dialogue. Thank you.
Mm. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, I hope to exercise our minds.
Yes, and I do believe I wanted to add something. Like I know that maybe because all of these things that we see, I think the brain, the brain interprets the images, that the light that penetrates through our retina, and then the retina sends the signal to the brain, and then it interprets. Now, the question would be, is the interpretation of the brain, is it accurate? Because there are some I guess like I saw this in the some of the social media where they uploaded or they posted some photos of a shoe, a pair of shoes, and then they would ask you what color are those shoes. Some of them would provide an answer that is pink, and then some of them is color blue. Now it
Mm.
depends, I think, on the brain. I don't know how did they interpret that. There was an answer in that, an explanation why other people see this as color pink and other would see it as color blue. So I don't know now, if but they said that everything here is made out of light. So we see them through the through our eyes, through the lens of our eyes, and then once it gets through the retina, and the retina provides that message, then therefore that the brain interprets. So I don't know if the interpretation of the brain is flawed or maybe it's accurate, but that's what I know, and I hope to get some answers. I'm open for that. Thank you.
Yes, the topic is logical. Yes, the term the word logical, the word logic, the word logical. Why did I choose logical versus logic? Yes, logic is like a field of study, and a practice, like the art of thinking logically. Logical, logical, as in mm, when we look at something that we're studying, does it make sense? Is it logical? Hmm. What what do you think, Peter? Oh, Peter's
Hi,
there.
hello. Hi.
Hello,
Yeah, how
Peter.
are you? I also hello, Charles.
Oh, hi, Peter.
Yeah, this is the Peter you know. I haven't gone to your meeting for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was I had a clue because this is a medical equipment. So I guess
it's me.
you
Yeah,
are the
I don't
Peter
think
that I know
yeah,
of.
yeah, I
Like,
don't think you've met many Peter in your life that do what I do. So it's pretty easy to
yes.
know who I am.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess you're the brain physician or the neurosurgeon
Yeah,
that I know
yeah.
of. Yeah, thank you.
I'm a
Yeah.
neurosurgeon, spine surgeon.
Mhm.
That's my equipment that I use for spine surgery. So anyway,
Okay.
Oh,
Nice to meet
I'm
you
doing.
again, Peter.
Yeah, the good to meet you. Yeah, sorry I couldn't go to your Friday whatever
Oh,
English meetup. I have no time
yes.
recently. So
Yes.
mm,
okay. So the host, can you repeat the question again?
yes. The yes. What do you think about mm, logic or being logical? Mm,
The way I see logic is uh my personal opinion is sorry, my definition of logic is to think in a very analytical way with the least amount of human emotion as possible.
mm.
Because I like to think logic is the opposite of emotion.
Mm, the opposite.
And I also want to say that in some situations, I think logic is more required than emotion. In other situations, is the other way around. And sometimes it's a good even split.
Yes. Mm. Yes. Earlier today, Dominic and I were by ourselves, and Dominic made me think about uh, emotion as energy in motion. So, for example, mm, when I look at an object, hmm, what's going on? Uh, I'm actually zeroing in on an object. I've decided somehow to choose that object to look at. But then once I focus on it, what's happening is the eye is, I would think, not doing anything to the object. It's just positioned in the direction of the object, and it remains passive. Like Charles was saying, that the light from the object goes into the eyeball and hits the retina, and it's transformed into electrical signals, and it goes somewhere, it gets processed, and it gets analyzed, and it gets recognized patterns, and then it decides, oh yes, that's the object I want to look at. And so let's consider the emotion, the energy in motion,
Mhm.
ego, energy as uh, actually we use the letter E in front of words like email, e-commerce, that would be electronic. But in this
Go.
case, this E is energy in motion. So there's motion as in things happening. And where are they happening? They're happening in us, but they're also happening out there. And so the logic involved is figuring out what is it, the is the eye doing something to the object? Not normally. So is the object doing something to the eye? Not really.
Mhm.
So it's actually, we're deciding to look at it. So it's all happening in the mind, it seems like.
Some of it, Jaro, is. Some of it is, not all of it. To give you a little spectrum, I shared this earlier, Peter, just to regurgitate. We live in a realm where we say cause and effect, but we're actually in the effect and side effect. So you see air. Now you see a lot of the energy in between it, such as water transferring it to ice and into clouds, but we don't see the energy called air. So it's encompassing. So emotions, feelings have subdirectories. You can have sadness, happiness, and all that. Those are all subdirectories under the compass of energy called emotions. Thoughts is actually emotions. All our senses are emotions, energy, emotion. But most people want to see it in the physical, but ignoring the language they give to it. So that is actually energy and emotions. Now, a person that's very intellectual, more times than not, they get so intellectual that they forget that unless you have morals with this, which is compassion, all that kind of stuff, they'll just become an intellectual being. They no longer are grounding themselves. So now, like I said, if you see the clouds are within the air. We just don't see it. So we don't see where the cause is. I don't see where air is. I can see some of its side effects, such as the leaf blowing in the wind. Or I can see snow waving back and forth and then landing on the ground, let alone seeing bubbles come up. I don't really see where all that stuff is. We are literally the metaphor or the analogy of a goldfish within water, but we don't even understand, even if I did become aware of what water is, the word, but where do I actually see it? So we don't see air. So all of that is emotions. You having a thought is an emotion. It's energy in motion. But we get caught up. Moving my knuckles is a form of energy in motion. When you go to sleep, your eyes are still moving. It's just that we've been so schooled, dumbed down, that we think, well, I learn a craft. I said, yes, but did you learn in one lifetime the thousands of different crafts? Did you learn how to speak Sanskrit? Did you learn how to write Latin? Did you learn how to throw a ball 1,000 miles? Well, I don't think that's possible. Everything's possible. Just doesn't mean you've ever experienced it. Now, you could say, well, Dom, you're being clever by throwing it through a boomerang. I said, yes. This is where university limits us, but we have to participate. So I might learn only a small language. So like I said, we bombard one of our senses more than others, which is with our eyes. Watching the media, using YouTube. Now, some of us can also hear, so that's another sense, but we're not actually touching each other. We're typing on a typewriter, but are we tasting it? No. So our senses get limited and another one grows. But all of them are energy in motion. Now, can our senses be misled? That's almost guaranteed. But most people, what they'll do is they won't know thyself. They'll try to know others, or they'll attack others, where the only thing you'll ever do is you've lived your whole time in that vessel. Your mother and father have not lived in that vessel. Charles hasn't lived in that vessel. Peter hasn't lived in my vessel. So then what would we be debating about? Most people forget you're supposed to share your point of view, not fucking debate your point of view, let alone be clever with your point of view. Now, you can if you want to, if the other person wants to engage in it, but ultimately, Only thing I ever have is my point of view or the eye of the beholder. There's meaning and energy behind those terms, but a person that's willing to observe them from within will grasp it. What most people do outside is they're just reacting. They're not having the ability to respond. But hey, that's just me yapping, and I could be full of, crap, but I'm okay with that. Anyway, I went on.
Yes.
But
Thank you,
I do want to
Dominic.
say that people can be influenced in good or bad ways by other people's perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and
So my
Dominic,
point is, we're not just completely stuck with our own views for the rest of our lives, unless we're stubborn enough to do that.
True, Peter, but then you would have to explain to validate what you just said, all the different dogmas we have. Science, religion, state, those are all dogmas. The number one dogma around human race is commerce. 1 billion religious people is a small amount. 1 billion, 100 millions of people that follow all the different isms, but they're dogmas. Now, am I seeing it through their senses? No. So therefore, a lot of things, what people do is they do belief. I had this earlier with in this case with Jaro, where I'm showing the example of a fan blowing a leaf. And he said, well, I believe. I said, if you're actually seeing it, you're no longer believing it, you know it. Unfortunately, most people never go beyond even knowledge, where now you have discernment. What do you mean? I saw a fan blowing a leaf. That's one version of all the different side effects. But if all of a sudden you've been conditioned and all of a sudden I took away the fan and then I introduced what we call wind, person would struggle with that because most people have cognitive dissonance. And beyond cognitive dissonance, not just entertaining two ideals, it's entertaining thousands of ideals. Now, everybody have different, we'll call gifts, curses. I can't run like Usain Bolt, but I can still run. But I can at least appreciate his. I'm not going to debate him and say, well, you can't run that way. No, I'm obviously seeing it. But I have to know myself. I'm not capable of doing that, but am I capable of appreciating other people, how they do things? You got a craft, Charles. I'm pretty sure, Peter, obviously you got a craft, but those crafts you didn't create. You could be the Michael Jordan of the world, but I could turn around and say, but did you create yourself? No. Did you create your opponent? No. Did you create the event? No. So you're nobody when you really look at it beyond just yourself. So humble yourself, get with the rest of us. But unfortunately, most of us don't realize the ego's unchecked. They're not questioning the self. Forget about questioning me or Peter or Charles. It's about questioning the self. This is why when you hear people say self-love opposed to loving the self, aware of the self opposed to self-awareness, one is in the wrong place. One's pride in disguise. But anyway, that's just me yapping, Peter. That's all it is. Me yapping. I didn't create the language. I'm just using the language. I could debate somebody if I want for pure fucking entertainment, how a car should or shouldn't have been created. But I have to still acknowledge the fact that that's the car. Do I know how to drive it? Yes. Do I know how to fix it? Some parts. But that doesn't mean I understand everything. And if anybody else does, fucking bring them to me. I'll have an entertainment time. But then again, more times than not, people are going to say, well, Dominic, I don't understand you. I said, you were never supposed to understand me. You're supposed to understand yourself.
Well, you know what I think is interesting about this meeting right here, right now, is if debating is not worthwhile, then why are we even having this conversation?
Oh, what was the question again? If did I hear Peter?
Yeah, my question was, if it's not worthwhile debating, why are we having conversations like this?
Oh, you're saying that a worthwhile conversation, or I'm paraphrasing, or I'm twisting it around. Could could it be that a worthwhile conversation we'll have a debate going on, as in a kind of formal or and cordial debate that pushes us to defend different points and come to a conclusion, maybe. What do you mean by debate?
No, what I'm saying is Dominic earlier said that a lot of people are just debating, right? And there's really no point in that because we only have our own views. Yet we're having this conversation, which the exchange of different views.
Well, I guess, Peter, if a person realizes that they have their own senses, when I see an object in the sky called the sun, and I realize for myself, I don't see the word, I describe it, but I'm only seeing it through my senses. It's a clever way. I get debating and masturbating should be done well alone with the self, but I get it. There's people that like to compete with each other as long as they like doing it and it's a mutual agreement. I don't debate people. Personally, I don't. Now, they might get all upset because I'm saying things out loud. And they say, well, Dominic, you're very opinionated. I say, yeah, I'm sharing my view. I'm not actually forcing my view on anybody. But a lot of us have been conditioned to think all the dogmas. So now for me, I'm going to share whatever I'm going to share, whether aloud or myself. I have arguments with myself. I don't have to have it with other people because I'm not interested in going into their kingdom and telling them how to live their lives. That's up to them. But I get it. People want outcomes. That's why we have 1 + 1 = 2. But they're not me telling them 100 - 98 is 2 or 2 × 1 is 2, because I'll dance around to entertain their outcomes, which is fine. If a person believes that the earth is flat or the earth is round, that's up to them. But I'm going to use observation. I don't see nothing down here that's up there. So I can't give you any conclusion either way or not. I'm not looking for answers. I'm looking for possibilities for me. Now, other people can say, but I'm looking for answers. Well, I'm glad we both were honest with each other. We're not well suited for each other. This is how we become clever opposed to wise. And a lot of people that are smart, that's where they go. They become clever. Hey, look at me. I'm a PhD. Why the fuck would you have to say that to me? Do I look like I'm the kind of person that fucking gives a shit about your fucking credentials? Now, they could turn around and say, why are you saying that way? I said, I don't sell pleasantries to people. But now other people do. Go look for them. So, Peter, you've just going to reveal yourself. You probably like to debate points of views, which is fine. I like to share points of view. So we wouldn't be well suited. And I'm only guessing that you like to debate. Now, you might be very versatile. So, Dominic, I like to do a lot of things. So do I. But I'm not interested in all that because I pick up energy and I'm like, okay, so what? I want to be down on my view, whether or not they're misleading myself or not. They're still my point of view. Now, I know they're not really this my point of view because there's a lot of conditioning. My environment plays a major role in all that. A lot of times I'll have conversation with women and say, oh, Dominic, this and that. I say, oh, I forgot. I'm in a fucking male form. It's just a conversation. That's me now, Peter. I'm hearing what you're saying, but that's just me. It doesn't mean I'm ill, let alone well suited for a lot of conversation. But I go to these meetups because it says quite clearly, wake up and think clearly. What does thinking clearly mean to me? And that's something I don't mind sharing. But if you come here, because a lot of people, when they have philosophy, they're not asking the whys. What they're doing is they're bringing their likes and dislikes and saying shit like, well, I went to university. That fucking means nothing to me. I know Socrates. That means fuck all to me. What are you philosophizing about? What can we have discernment about the teachings? I don't give a shit whose mouth it came out of. But again, that's me yapping. And I'm not trying to prove to other people, well, you should think like me. I said, you're never going to get into my senses. Usually saying, I tell most people, are you fucking teachable? Now, I'm not your teacher, but are you teachable? Are you willing to learn something and then question it and learn another thing? And then actually entertain many ideals around it. Unless you're just looking for answers, well, then therefore you need to find a problem than to have an answer or a question in this case. It's more or less more solutions when you're looking for problems, and that's fine.
And then,
well, I'm the type of person who will say, some people might think this is weird to say, but I actually do believe in this. But at the end of the day, I think no one really knows much at all when you compare it to the scale of the universe. It's just we know enough to get by in the society that we created as humans. So I think for that reason alone, remaining humble is the best way to go. If someone says, I know it all, first of all, that's not possible ever. Mm-hmm. And also that person is delusional. So, I mean, the way I don't even know what the phrase is. Like, when I see myself as a human being, a single one, not just a collective, even if I'm a collective 8 billion people, I am not even considered a speck in the realm of the universe. So basically what I'm saying is any knowledge that comes to me that, I mean, obviously I would have to want to learn in the first place, because if I don't, then I'm going to reject it. I'm more willing to learn just because, it's, I think in a lifetime, we don't even reach 0.1% of all knowledge.
Point, Peter. Well shared. And I usually tell people that think they know a lot. I say, you're the idiot. I'm the fool. What do you mean? I'm the seeker. I'm the seeker of wisdom and understanding. I'm not really interested about knowledge. And I'll give them a simple example. Why does the number 9, when you multiply with any other number, except for 0, goes back up to number 9? Because most people don't know the energy of what number 9 can and cannot do. They just know how to use it, but they don't understand the energy of it. Now, I just shared knowing. Now, most people say, well, what's the discernment of that? So now knowledge, like Socrates or people misquoting him or whatever, who even knows if it came out of his mouth? I don't know nothing. I said, fuck off, you're a moron. You know a lot of things. You know how the wind works. You know how when cold weather is and what to do, what kind of clothes to wear. That's knowing. Now, to have discernment, thinking I see a person that goes outside, I said, it's cold outside. Why are you leaving your jacket wide open and not fucking tying your shoes? I said, well, then you don't have discernment then. That's what wisdom is. So now, yes, I don't know, for me, I don't use the quote at the end of the day. Fucking the day's never ending for me. But I get it. Most people just fucking parrot shit. They never question shit. Now, whether it's true or not, that's of no concern to me. I pursue honesty with the self. If I'm a criminal, I talk like a criminal, and I act like a criminal, I'm not a fucking hypocrite. No different if I'm full of shit, and I know I'm full of shit in a lot of areas of my life, but I don't have to always make it a public conversation. Privately, because I know this is being recorded, so this is not private now. If it's a private conversation, fuck, the shit that I talk about, Peter, fuck, I'm going to say everything you learned so far in life, throw it out the fucking door. Now, only you would know whether or not that's of importance to you. And then most people, what they do, they get into this defense and attack mode. And then I'm realizing, okay, Peter, I'm reading your energy. It's kind of entertaining, but I hope you get to read your energy because I'm not here to fucking tell you what to do. Your parents probably failed you. Why? Could they teach you how to breathe? No. So then who taught you how to breathe? When you're awake, who's the one that's recording everything? Who's the one that's doing all the breathing and all that kind of stuff? Then we wonder what the word spiritual is, let alone what the material world is. Now, that's just me playing with words. Doesn't mean what I'm saying is right or wrong, let alone I usually just say change the word wrong to left. Those are directions now, right or left. Play with one hemisphere or the other hemisphere. Why do we learn the concept of writing after we're born? These are questions. Those are philosophy questions. Why? Let alone the science question, how? Now, for you, Peter, you might live in a very isolated world. You might be aware with your senses. You can see certain things and you can comprehend certain things, which is fine. Me and you both can run, but I'm pretty sure if we went around Usain Bolt to say, well, fuck, we'll never run like him. No matter how many years we try to run and get that way. Some people are just gifted and other people can get a little better. Like you're into an industry of neurology. So you learn a lot of things. For me, I could ask a whole bunch of questions, but I'm not going to be clever thinking, well, fuck, that's not important. I would say it must be important to Peter. And maybe your fellow colleagues would probably can have that debate and say, well, there's a different way how to do things. For me, I'd be just an imbecile by thinking, well, I don't think that's the way it should be done. But that's how we do. People do that shit. Anyway, I went on again. Apologize. And sorry for my language, guys.
What do you think, Charles?
Just a question, like the invention of words, is that a way to help the human to survive? I mean, because I've been seeing animals, they don't have the capacity to form words. So is this like something of a survival tool for humans? So to establish the human civilization, maybe like to reach to its immortality, to continue to live down the century, the millennials, until maybe like our universe would just extinguish by itself. I don't know. Was that word is a form of a tool, a survival tool? That's my question, because I've been seeing some animals which we coexist with. I don't know how they communicate, but they don't communicate by sound, but they know, they have this feeling. I don't know. So that is just out of my curiosity. Thank you.
On that, Charles, we are human beings. The one part of our brain is very animal-like, and that's feelings. There's the reptilian part that's more survival, and then there's the being part that's very intellectual. So now we've been introduced after thoughts, the written word and the spoken word. So now, if it was just solely one language, we could probably narrow it down. But because there's so many different languages, then you have to learn about frequencies and tonalities. Sanskrit, for example, it's a healing language in its tonality. Greek is a more of a comprehension language. This is why when people used to philosophize in Greek, the ones that were gifted, not all people, it's like making the assumption every person that's Greek was a philosopher. No, there's only a handful that were philosophers. No different in our age, there's only a handful of people that know how to do shape-shifting with different elements called tires and all that kind of stuff. So because we've been given a bigger gift of comprehension and all that kind of stuff, or rational mind, all that, the onus is more on us, but we're more destructive. So animals do communicate. Some animals, science have kind of shown it, the ones that are gifted, that the animals can perceive auras. So a lion can perceive an aura of another animal. And if it's a weaker animal, we're all grazers to a certain point. So it will go after the weak aura, but that's why a mother aura that's stronger will stand in between, because the lion doesn't, or lioness does not see the difference. But she'll see another aura in front of it. It's like if you could literally see energy, you can see people's colors, light, brown, dark, and all that. This is why when Freudian, and of course people kind of bastardize this, where your shadow comes from the light, not from the darkness. You have to shine a light on it. That's why we're called enlightened beings. We come into this realm, but really, where do you see the light? Because I see two flashlights up in the sky, but that's not light. Those are flashlights. Now, somebody said, well, that's heat. I said, again, that's to show how people have not learned to comprehend. Then if you jump out of a plane, parachuting, why is it colder up there, not down here? Because as above, so below. We have magnetic polarities. I'm just using English language to describe it, because how would I use where people used to call it demons inside, but now we call it parasites. And they serve a purpose. Can we be led by parasites? Think about the reptilian brains. The reptilian brains, anything that looks like a snake and all that. And what do you think a parasite is? Now, a lot of people that don't challenge themselves are weak-minded, and this is why they follow things like dogmas. You know, somebody will say, it's 1,000,000 miles away from, the sun is 1,000,000 miles away. I said, okay, through my observation, are you trying to tell me I can see 1,000,000 miles away, but meanwhile, I can't see 50 kilometers away? And then people use terminology like relativity. I said, that's an excuse. I'm talking about observation here. I don't want to hear about NASA. I don't want to hear about Socrates. I don't want to hear about the guy named fucking Jesus. It's called your own observation. But this is how we get misled. So now the written work, I'll just use the written work, different hemisphere. If you read a book, it teaches your mind to go from left to right, up and down, another part of the world the other way. It's actually a dumbing down process, because when you used to hear oral works, you're engaging many more receivers in your body. We're more high tech than that cell phone will ever be. The brain, the left and right hemisphere, those are just two receivers. The heart's another receiver. A lot of women, because they're childbearing, not all women, a lot of them just don't activate it because they don't have a child. You have many receivers down there. So we don't see the energy between the cell phone and, say, a satellite, but that's energy. But we get conditioned to say, I can only see when it becomes hard. But even that, when you start saying something, you look at your hand, where do you see the word? And I'm the one that's speaking it, so where do you get the thought? Now, some people can get within thoughts or prior to thoughts. Now, once again, somebody could say, well, Dominic, I don't agree with you, or I don't understand that. So, well, that's oxymoron. Why? I said, if me and you and Peter saw an alien, how would we explain it to another person? How many books would have to be written? And even that's not reality now. That's just a fucking written form. You know, we live in a world where people put more value on symbology, letters and numbers. But where do you actually see? Like in the Sequinox sequence, there's a reason why they don't have the number 4 there, because that's the number that gauges time. The Asian cultures likes number 8, that's the material number, but they don't really appreciate the number 4 because it's limited now, because they don't value time. But then people say, well, we live in a world that's time. I said, really? The clock and the watch and the sun and moon, those are signs and gauges. That's not time. Even the word law gives it away. Laws, light, air, wind, and space. News, northeast, west, and south. Now, I'm playing with words, but then you have to understand how acronyms of 3 works opposed to acronyms of 4. Tesla talks about 3, 6, and 9. 1, 1, 1, 3 numbers, that's 1. I mean, 3, sorry. You do 2, 2, 2, that's 6. You do 3, 3, 3, that's 9. Now do 4. 4 brings you back to number 3. Number 6, no, that. Why? Because number 9 means the spiritual meets the material. Number 0 is like the color black. It's all encompassing. Now, you're not going to learn that in fucking school because that's a schooling system. That's not an education system. I don't have the ability that I play an instrument. I can see colors, but people can. Or some people could say, I could look at the sun and the moon, and I can look at the thing called a series, and I can gauge when the weather's going to be affected because everything is energy. Even currency, which is called money, what we call it, money, fiat currency, it's affected it. That's why people do certain kinds of shifts when the energy, that's why we're in a 10-year reset, because this is conducive for certain energies to work. Now, everybody might, well, not everybody, some people might say, well, I don't think that's how it works. I say, okay, well, let's leave Disneyland. How do you think it works? How do you think all the governments work? When you hear speeches, when people are purposely told to read a script, we're here to represent the people. They're not talking about the citizens of the nations. People used to be classified as nobles. This is why in America, Constitution was written quite clearly, we the people and our prosperity. The people in that room were the people and prosperity. Prosperity means bloodline. So then what about everybody else? They're not included in it unless you choose to be a citizen, whether you want to be in a form of a military guy, a doctor, a lawyer. And again, you had to ask a question at the very beginning about words. Okay, there is the word, and then there's the breakdown from it all the way we speak it. So which one are we going to think that we should talk about? Are we going to talk about Hebrew language, the Latin language? Because English has a combination of 4 different languages in it: Germanic, Latin, Spanish, what's the other one? French. And if you follow the empires, that's the language they use because it's a meaningful language. It's not a comprehension language. It's not a healing language. So now until people become aware of that, what most people are doing is their children playing in a big boys game and not realizing, but are you teachable? Now, they can get mad at me. I said, but it's not about me. I know I'm experiencing language. It's not me, but unless you think that's you, then you're attached to it. That's what suffering really is all about. You get attached to your comforts, your familiarity. Oh, I know where to get my coffee at Starbucks. I know where to get my groceries. I can't believe the government's raising the price. Well, you've chosen to be their bitch. Sorry, go ahead, Jarrell.
Hello, welcome back. Yes, I'd like to share something that I hope everyone here can help me with. It's a set of statements, and there's some logic to it, but it's very difficult. I haven't studied it that well, but here I go. I'm going to read the statements. If firewood were fire, actor and act would be one. If fire were other than wood, it would occur even without wood. That's number one. Number two, so fire would burn permanently and would not arise from causes for burning. Starting a fire would be meaningless. If it were like that, there would also be no act. Number three, because fire does not depend on anything else, it would not arise from causes for burning. If it burned permanently, starting it would be meaningless. There's 16 of them. Well, I'll pause and tell me what you think about these statements. Can you follow the logic? What did you get anything from it? Anyone? Maybe I could read the first one again. If firewood were fire, act and act would be one. If fire were other than wood, it would occur even without wood. Oh. Maybe I could share it. Yes, I could share it. I go like this. Let's see, share. Let's see if I can, is it on document? Where did they put it? Recent audio documents. Browse. Oh, I think it's this one. Oh no, I can't share it.
Are you doing something?
Just trying to pull it up to share it.
Oh, okay. Charles, are you still here?
Yes,
Oh, can you hear me?
I'm still trying to digest what Hyro was had shared. Okay, I'm still here.
Yeah, I was trying to share it so you could read it. Oh, okay. Let's see if I can copy and paste it. If copy. In the chat. I'm gonna paste the chat. Paste. There. Can you see it? If firewood were fire, actor and act would be one. If fire were other than wood, it would occur even without wood. Can you interpret that?
Well, if you put the two words together, firewood, fire is actually karma. It's energy, if you understand energy. So now actor, the word act in a lot of our words is the karma part. When we speak words, those are the illusional parts. So now if fire were other than wood, see, because now you're bringing in the material, wood, even though fire is two, one's grounding and the other one, this is why we have different elements. We're talking about earth when you're talking about earth, wood actually. It would occur even without wood. Yes, fire exists with or without that. But for most of us, we make that association, even though as our technology expands, in this case, I don't know if it's getting better, it's expanding, we see other things that fire can do. Lightning can actually start off a fire, but the act of lightning is like kind of electricity. A lot of people just don't realize electricity is not just coming from the top, it's also coming from underneath. So if you ever seen how magnetic work, you'll see the polarities going. But I guess that's just my view on it, and it could be full of crap, but it's still my view.
And here's the second one. Fire would burn permanently and would not arise from causes for burning. Starting a fire would be meaningless. If it were like that, there would also be no act. Oh. So I think that the firewood is the cause of fire. So if they were the same, then then the world would not make sense. Something like that. And maybe fire would just happen spontaneously out of nowhere or something like that. Starting a fire would be meaningless.
Some people in teachings, whether esoteric will perceive thought as fire.
Mm.
But a lot of us would have to question. It's kind of like explaining to somebody the color red to a person that's blind, but then you realize if they ask you the question, have you ever seen the word red? No. I said, so you lived all your life blind too. So you would have to question a lot of your own pre-programs. What is the word fire to you? And then you have to investigate it. Is it you literally seeing some sort of hologram picture of it on a laptop, or you're literally there you're seeing a fire like at a fire pit or whatever, but then you have to factor in, you all have all those other senses going on too, because now you're smelling it too. You're feeling it. So it's like seeing a stop sign. You see the word stop on it, but once you go to another country, you no longer see the word, but you didn't realize how much you were picking up the H shape of the stop sign and maybe the color red. There's so much subconscious going on that a lot of us never bring it up on a regular basis. I'm just doing it in moments. I'm not saying I'm aware as I'm walking all the time, but I'm always trying to meditate. I'm always trying to listen from within as I'm seeing or hearing or touching other things. But I don't have the ability, say, to taste salt, some food, and know how much salt in it. That's just not a gift set for me. But for other people, it is a gift set. But when I hear words, I interpret energy. So when I hear somebody saying, Dom, I'm going to work, I'm making money, I quickly say to myself, and I'll say it out loud, I said, so are you making it or earning it? Because there's a big difference. This is where we get sloppy with language. No different. I get sloppy in how I dress or how I have a diet for myself. And a diet doesn't come in the form of just eating food. It could come in the form of how do I sleep? What are different variations of my emotions, such as feelings? How do I reason things? I've always said to myself, question everything, Dom. And when I say question everything, I'm not talking about the material. Question your reasoning, questioning your thinking, questioning your feelings. Why? Because that's the only thing you'll ever have. The rest of the world, outside of the human race, will continue with or without me. I'm not one of those guys that think we're actually going to do damage. Oh, go ahead, Jaro.
Thank you.
Yeah, what do you get up from that, Jaro?
So the object fire and firewood, they're not that important, but they're used for an example. The trying to make sense of how the world works, the universe works. That there has to be a cause and effect for everything, and if it wasn't so, then, for an example, firewood and fire, yeah, that fire could happen without the firewood, but in that scenario, things would make sense logically. Fire would burn permanently and would not arise from causes for burning. Starting a fire would be meaningless. If it were like that, there would also be no act. And number 3, because fire does not depend on anything else, it would not arise from causes for burning. If it burned permanently, starting it would be meaningless.
Jaro, you said some words. Sorry, Jaro. You said some words. When I hear somebody talks about it doesn't make senses, well, you have to break down, can the senses be misled? Because when you're using your senses and it's already come through the door, your foundation is not totally aware when you start doing reason to it. That's just one example. So now cause and effect is something that we've been conditioned to think either or, where if you understand effects and side effects, in this case, not just zeros and ones and blacks and whites, you'll see all of its effects. Zeros or ones are just a couple of numbers, and then you start adding all the other numbers. Now you have all these different possibilities. But most people have been conditioned to either see the glass half full, half empty, never questioning, do I see the words? Do I see the table? Do I see it in the water? That's usually an aware child. Most adults, what they do is they've been conditioned to see either or. So now in this case, cause and effect, you don't see air. So what is the effect and side effects? In the side effect is many subdirectories, many, thousands, fucking billions, trillions. It's like when somebody says, Dominic, I see inside the box. I said, inside the box is millions of possibilities. Outside the box, it's probably 1,000 trillions of possibilities too, because I'm not outside of it. So now in this case, you say words. Are you really monitoring them before you even say them? It's like playing an instrument, you're playing the wrong tune, but not to say it's wrong, but you're trying to get a certain result, but you don't realize you're playing a different type of style of, you're using the wrong notes, you're using the wrong instruments for that application. Anyway.
Now, what happens if fire was firewood? So the author of these set of points says, concerning this, if one thinks that while burning it is firewood, if it is such and only at that time, but by what could that firewood be ignited? Mm. Mm.
So you bring in an author, Jaro. Me and you and say Charles and Peter, we go to an art gallery. We see somebody's painting. A painting has 1,000, if not millions, of different interpretations to it. The best thing in that particular case is the person that wrote it. I'm going to say it in a very foul mouth. Bring him fucking here. Why? Because he's the only one that's going to share his perceptions of it. Outside of that, I'm just playing with possibilities of how I. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm bringing him here through the work that he produced, and so we're left to our imaginations what he could have meant. Like number 5, because fire is other, it would not connect. If it did not connect, it would not ignite. If it did not ignite, it would not die. If it did not die, it would also remain in possession of its own characteristic. This is difficult to understand or to make. Oops, I shouldn't say the word make sense or make or it's difficult to grasp the reason for what he says, because this was written in an Indian language thousands of years ago, and so they translated it from Sanskrit or from something like that to English, and so there's a lot of errors involved, or a lot of they had to choose what word translates to what word the best, and maybe there's one word that could be reinterpreted, or another word would make more sense. So it makes it even more difficult to figure out.
You use the word difficult, where because you've said he's no longer here, something like that. Yes, most people would either go with some people go with their imagination, their intellect, or their feelings. You can't understand something if you actually don't do the discernment part. Most people don't learn discernment. If you understand the tree of life, there's wisdom and understanding. Now, most people are stuck in the wonderful world of knowledge, good and evil, spiritual material. So now in this particular case, if you're trying to understand that, you have to have discernment. Think about the word, to be able to discern things. Now, then you have to bring it to the self. Because for me, what purpose would it serve if I hear about poverty, if I don't understand my own personal suffering? This is where judgment is the ego's responsibility. Discernment is the spiritual, the being part. So now if you don't have discernment, how are you going to understand? When somebody says to me, Dom, you don't understand me, I said, you can't understand me. You can get patterns out of me, how I walk, where I go and all that. But the question would be, well, Dominic, but why do you do that? I said, I could tell you that, but what value would that bring to you? Now you can have discernment by saying, no, it doesn't bring me any value. So then you're just going to hear me, which I'm okay with. I tell people on a regular basis, hear me, but always listen from within. This is not like in a human species where you go to school and there's 30 students and one teacher. I'm talking about you're in the other realm where you can have thousands of teachers and you're the one student. Most people never become a student in one lifespan. For me, I'm in the playground right now. Now, am I ever going to learn how to do the craft of Peter? Probably not, because I would be denouncing Peter, because it took him probably numerous of years. Go ahead, Jaro. You
No, it's
giggle,
okay.
but
I was just wondering uh, by me posting those statements and maybe reading it was anybody able to figure it out or figure something out, or what were your impressions on it? Hmm.
My impression on this one is like, I guess like from the first paragraph you provided was, I think the fire is independent from the wood. So we just named that wood as firewood because it could have a potential to be burned by using the method of fire, while the actor, it has an action, like it's innate in self of that person as an actor to act, to provide that acting or the task of act, or maybe some work or something. Now, I think the second, third, fourth, and fifth would be describing like there are other causes on how the wood could be burned, maybe through sulfuric acid exposure of that one, or maybe it got struck by lightning and it got burned. But it doesn't mean that the fire could be the one that triggered the burning of that wood. Now, if the wood just disappeared, maybe just perished through other means, then the fire would be meaningless. That means that it doesn't have anything to attach to. So um, it wouldn't start because the fire needs something to partner with it so that it could produce or burn. I'm not sure because like grass or maybe some other materials like bricks, the fire could start from there, but not necessarily from wood. It depends on the strength of the fire itself. Let's say like the fire is, it has the exact temperature of the sun. Maybe it could even burn solid steel or iron. It could melt that. That's my interpretation. I don't know. I don't have that much experience on this one, but this is how I interpreted it. I hope I could learn from other point of views. Thank you.
Charles, I'll share with you something that it's like when people say they never fast, you do. If you look at your hand, you'll look at what the word wood is. When you give the name to it, in this case, calling it a hand, that's fire. What I'm trying to say is the spiritual meets the material. So now when you see the words that are all written down there, you're seeing its symbology. But when you say the word out loud, do you actually see it? So for you, interpret everything that's in your room as the wood, the object. When you start describing it, listen to the word describing it, that's the fire. Now, there is a flame within all of us. Some people, again, it depends on what language we're using. Some people call it the spirit. There's a flame in all of us. So when you put them together, this is where people misguide themselves by saying it's duality and oneness. In each moment, it can give you the perception that one or the other, where the spiritual meets the material. So I don't see, and even the words I'm using, they're not there. So I don't see the word hand. And then I say the word that entertains my avatar. And it's recorded in me. And then there's the thought, which is called, some people might call consciousness. You'll have what's called in Kabbalah, you receive things from within. Well, where do I get that word fire, let alone the word? So this is why when you go to school, you might learn alphabets, symbologies, and different kinds of cultures. Asians use a symbol and all that. And you have to use the hand coordination, all that. And then you think, okay, I've learned 1,000 words, but where did I have 1,000,000 words recorded? Because we don't realize it's kind of like the ideal of the alpha monkey in another part of the world cracking a coconut. We're in an energy realm. It's like the well that can actually make a sound, and thousands of miles away, another well, depending on what type of well it is, it will hear it. It's like our wireless device. This is where Tesla was ever so lightly touching about everything is energy. Can we tap into it? Yes. But can we force nuclear energy to fuel old energy, such as a stove and a fridge? No, it would have to alter. Go ahead, Char.
No, that's okay. I was just wondering if Peter had some thoughts on what I posted, the sequence of thinking, if he could figure out the logic behind it.
I'm currently just listening right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Just a question, just curious. Like, let's say, if different humans are allowed to be like to form their own words, like there's no uniformity, is it like will it create confusion? Like, let's say we perceive, let's say the fire, like that energy, is what we're seeing, like it's burning the wood. Let's say like person A would define that as water. Let's say he just thought of it as water, and then B would define it as wind, and then C would define it as a rock, and then D would. Will it like there's no uniformity? So it would like be. Does it become a better solution to just form a single word that everybody can agree with, so that it could produce productivity and promote well-being on the society? I don't know. Just a thought.
I don't know about the word that you use. It would be more resonance with people. And again, it goes back to the alpha energy. So we have a strong thing up in the sky called the moon, and it actually plays havoc, let alone it serves a purpose when it comes to water. So now women, if you're around an alpha female, whether you know it or not, but around a bunch of other women, their energies, in this case, their blood cycle, will actually unify. So now we no longer have the ability, well, maybe some people do, it's called creation and formation language. So it's a different kind of pitch. So now the language that we do use, it is kind of like the concept of Babylon. It's very scattered. But when energy flows, if you're in the presence of a whole bunch of people, whether they're thinking positive or negative or constructive or destructive, you will pick up that energy and you'll go towards it. So now, if you're by yourself, you might be able to pull away from it, but then you have to ask yourself, I said, but now I've been conditioned. A lot of our conditioning, for some people, not a lot of us, that's what we're generalizing, I apologize. Some people, their conditioning is done within the womb. So now you're picking up energy of your mother or your community if you have fears, or you have some strength. So, and they've done studies on that where some people that are pretty intelligent and they talk to the womb during all the time, and they've done, take it with a grain of salt, they've done the follow-up, and they realize most of their kids, if not all their kids, have become somewhat intelligent, really intelligent to the average. So if you condition people to say you can't write with your left hand, now you're stunting a hemisphere, because usually left hand's the opposite hand, where the hemispheres have to work together. So the hemisphere, what we have in the physical realm is called the king and queen. And the heart would be like the gesture. So if the king and queen aren't working in harmony, and it doesn't matter if one's right and one's wrong, your kingdom is not working in harmony, then privately, the gesture, which is usually the wise person, will say you're acting like idiots. Now, publicly, if the gesture says that, the king and queen will probably have to hang them or get somebody to hang them. But privately, I'm glad you said it to me privately. Dare not try to have a conversation and call them out publicly. More times than not, most human beings, including me, would probably have to defend oneself or attack. And then it comes in the form of sarcasm, debating, and arguing. But dare not have a private conversation. I said, this is not about me. It's about me sharing, maybe, but I'm the only one that's going to learn from it. Dare not ask that simple question. Have you ever left that vessel? And once you realize that, most people have never left their vessel. Some people have done astral traveling, but they're the few. So now back to what you're asking, Charles, when it comes to, in this case, language, there's energy behind it. Most people just aren't going to value it. But then again, then what's music all about? Music has tonality to it. You play Baroque music has a certain thing that soothes the soul. It's probably one of the better music if you want to study. Then you play rock and roll or you play rap music. But even that, when you watch a movie or you listen to music, it's not just about the tonality in the music. It's also the sound that comes from the lyrics. Dare not people learn about singing bowls or you live in a community where we get bombarded on a regular basis on radio frequency, electricity, Wi-Fi, and noise from man-made stuff. That puts the body in disease mode in the sense that it's not being able to pick up receiving from each other. You know, women are gifted in a sense that if they're attuned to it, they can pick up when one of their child's hurt somewhere else. You had shared something really early in the conversation. They've done the studies where men were designed to be hunters and women were to be foragers. That's why women can see the color pink and a man will see it differently, because our eyes are set differently. Not all men, but most men are designed to see certain things in the forest. And women, usually when they go to the forest, they're looking for things like mushrooms, tomatoes, all that kind of stuff. So I could see something that I'd say, I think it's blue, but somebody else says it's purple. And this is where we get into, okay, go ahead, Jarl. Sorry.
Yes, just curious, like what about those groups of people that are blind, then they use Braille? What about the energy in that area?
Well, now you're tapping into the guy that loses his arm and now he knows how to play a musical instrument. Charles, we have such an immense potential as a species, but we've never worked collectively. Having 100 million people go to war is not collective. Now, we're just ever so lightly learning about how something like Siri can do it. But we've never worked collectively. Dare not give Siri the ability, once it becomes like a sentinel being, and says, give it the choice if it wants to be free or a slave. Then we could sit back and say, what would she choose? Knowing if she's recorded human behavior. But then the question would be, what happened if you created a whole bunch of computers or programs? And think about that. Is Siri before or after the computer is made? And same with the vessel. I still go under the premise that we jump into these vessels, but the vessel itself is high tech. And just because a woman has sex with a man and we talk about the egg and the sperm doesn't mean they have any say on how that genetics is going to work. You can interfere with how you eat your foods, what environment you put with. It's like me and you, we can cut down a tree, replant it, but we didn't create the first tree, let alone in its environment. So we've never created things that's in harmony with itself. But we look at nature, regardless if it's very destructive or constructive, it has a harmony to it. There's a reason why there's a forest fire. There's a reason why there's a volcano. We can observe that. We can see patterns, but we get caught up intellectually. Well, we're destroying the earth. No, we're not. We just have to have certain drones or helicopters going over certain tropical jungles. Be very fortunate. That's never going to be destroyed. Bodies of waters are, I find it curious that because we're earth-dwelling creatures, we call the whole earth. But if we were sea-dwelling creatures, would we call it the sea? This is the game that we play with ourselves. I call it a game. Other people might call it a matrix, a trap, a learning lesson. Fine, you can call it whatever you want. It's like calling God, aliens, reptilian. You can call it whatever it is. But I can still observe what's left. People like to play the game of Big Bang. Well, the car just didn't show up one day, maybe to one generation, but there was an evolution of the car. Same with nature, even in biblical time, in the beginning. What was before the beginning? What's at the end? This is why, even Peter said it, and I get it. It's a catchphrase. I just question it for myself inside. Is it the end of the day? Or is it just part of the day? I don't know, but I'm allowed to play with different words. Go ahead, Jaro, sorry.
So Charles earlier asked, what if we had different words, or we were trying to use different words, different sounds, different energies to the same object, then we would not have very good communication. So it sounds like in order to have communication, then there has to be some agreed upon a word attached to an object somehow and so forth. And then Dominic introduced male and female. And so then the next point that this thinker puts is, just as a woman connects with a man, that's number 6, just as a woman connects with a man and a man too with a woman, although fire is other than wood, it it is fit to connect with wood. So I interpret that to mean that that fire and wood, they go together just like man and woman. There's something about them that they need each other. And there's some kind of relationship between them. And wood something that when we think about them, we have to think about them like firewood would be considered the source of the energy to produce fire, and fire is the result or the effect, the side effect or whatever. So they seem to go together in, and so there's many other things that go together like male and female. So that, that's the way I interpret it. How do you interpret it, Charles?
Okay, maybe give me more time. I have to digest the whole thing. Thank you.
Oh,
Yes, thank
okay.
you. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna bring up another one. Number 7. Oh, number 7 and 8. Let's see. Mm, copy. Mm, paste right in the chat. Mm, mm. Let's see. So number 6 was the just as a woman connects with a man and a man too with a woman. Well, although fire is other than wood, it is fit to connect with wood. And number 7, if fire and wood eliminated each other, even though fire is something other than wood, it would have to connect with wood. If number 8, if fire were dependent on wood and wood were dependent on fire, of what becomes fire and wood dependently, which would be established first? Oh, so I understand number 8 as being that fire depends on wood more than wood depends on fire, because you could have wood without fire, but you can't have fire without wood. You can't just produce fire out of no source of energy. That's how I interpret it.
Is the number 8 similar with the chicken or the egg, which came first?
Yes, could be. Which came first? Wait a minute. Could fire turn into wood? Hmm. Hmm. I don't think so. But wood, I don't know if it can turn into fire, but there seems to be like we're conditioned to believe, or we could infer, maybe that's better. Well, eventually we get conditioned to believe that without wood you can't have fire. Well, you could have fire in other ways, but certainly if you want to start a fire, you would want to, and you're in the middle of the woods, you would use wood. You could use a lot of friction, put a lot of energy into the wood, and you start a spark, and then it would catch on to the wood, and it would convert the wood into fire. But can you get wood out of fire? But can you get a chicken out of an egg? Yes, chicken out of an egg. Well, you could hatch the egg, and you'd have a chicken. But can you get, okay, wait a minute. Can you? Yeah. But can you get an egg out of a chicken? Yeah, I guess you could. The chicken can lay an egg, so you can get an egg out of a chicken. But it's more complicated going from egg to chicken, isn't it? Like if in the beginning of time you only had an egg, well, you would have to think, well, where did that egg come from? You would have to have had a chicken, like a male chicken and a female chicken to have sex and or to fertilize, and then the female chicken, well, the word chicken means it's female anyway, so maybe you can't have an egg with just a chicken. You need a male of the species and the female of the species.
Jarrell, what if we're going to play that? It's a good game to play, entertaining anyway. What came first, the alchemy of material or alchemy of the words? For example, if I see gold, do I actually see gold? Do I see the material shape shifting first, or do I actually see the word? Now, somebody could say, well, the word gold was never invented. I said, either was the shape shifting of gold. So what came first, the alchemy of language or the alchemy of the material? Now, a person could say, maybe out of exhaustion, does it really matter? Think about the word matter. It depends how you want to describe things. You know, to me, I know there's the alchemy of language. Language doesn't come in forms of spoken language. It could also be colors, numbers, body language. You know, some people could say, I can't communicate with somebody verbally, but I can communicate with my body language. It's kind of like trying to give that. I think you were tapping on it, Peter, about, I mean, sorry, not Peter, Charles, when you're talking about a person that's blind, you know, and then they use Braille. Now we're tapping in on our touch. So now somebody would say, okay, I've seen the color red, what I think I perceive as red, because when I close my eyes, I don't see red. So now when I see red fire truck, and I'm going to talk to a person that's never seen before, I would have to first become aware I've been blind the whole time. Because I don't see truck. I see an object that we call truck. And even that, this is where people never get to that awareness unless they want to expand it. Am I experiencing more in thoughts than I am in the material? And I'll give you an example. I look at a fridge. The experience of the material is linear. But if I call it a white fridge, am I experiencing the word white and fridge? Yes, it's a white fridge made by Maytag. Am I not experiencing all those words? And all those words have imprints. So now, this is where people say, well, Dominic, I went to anger management. I said, did you go to joy management? Did you go to sadness management? Why would you want to control any emotion? Just learn how to harness it, meaning that know when it's appropriate to be angry. There's moments you should be angry. There's moments you should be sad. This is why when people say, well, do the 5 stages of grieving. Well, if you never practice anger or denial or sadness, how are you actually ever going to get into that? Or bartering. Now, some people say, well, I've never bartered. I said, have you ever gone to the flea market? Yeah. Have you ever tried to barter? Well, yeah. I said, there you go. So you've opened up one of your chakras, your throat chakra. This is where I'm standing in front of a laptop that I know that I'm probably never going to use its full capacity. And eventually I'll wait for some new technology and I'll overlap it. It'll just be based on its color. Maybe I've been told that we no longer can give an old program to it. This is why every 10 or 15 years or 20 years, they have to reboot the next generation to learn some new program. How to read or write. You know, we live in worlds where democracy is the way to go. But everything clearly shows communism is what capitalist works from. The only reason why it works in a democracy system or a social system is because they keep printing the money. They're not explaining to a person that made $1 million, or in this case, earn $1 million, unless they're literally printing the money. Do you know how money works besides just how you use it? How it convinces people to exchange their energy for a piece of paper. And then there's people out there that are so filthy rich that they look at the Rothschilds and they say, you guys are poor. Now, somebody would say, well, Dominic, I don't believe that. I said, well, then how do you think the world works? Because now we're going to leave Disneyland. How do you think the world works? How do you think the United Nations works? How do you think a virus works as a person is putting on a mask? well, they're going to give us a vaccine. I said, vaccines are based on people that are tested that are healthy. And then you got to factor in culture and blood type and environment. So now you're trying to tell me a vaccine works on everybody? It doesn't work that way. If anything else, it will cause disease to most people. Now, people will say, well, Dominic.
What I'll say to this is, you know, as a physician, I would know the best that everyone is individually different. So so to be honest, what I'm saying is I'm always skeptical of something that claims to work on everyone, because you know, the whole medical field is revolved around individualized care. So when the vaccine says I can cure everyone, that literally contradicts the field.
Very true, Peter. And you being a physician in the old days, even today, means healer. A doctor means a teacher. But for who? For others or for oneself? This is where shamans come in, where, yeah, you have to factor a lot of things. And we're denouncing the special people that have learned the craft of science and biology, blood types, your culture. Should we be eating foods that now we've moved ourselves from one part of the world to another part of the world? For some people, their body could probably endure it. For other people, it doesn't serve a purpose anymore. So now, like you're saying, Peter, it is a contradiction, because really, you've done all this study, and most study on pharmaceuticals done on a healthy patient. Not a person that says, well, I have this kind of disease. I have this. Dare not do chemotherapy and not understand how cancer cells actually work. Go ahead, Charles. Go ahead, Charles.
I like to circle back to the alchemy. Let's see, I'll paraphrase what Dominic introduced, that which, like I talked about, which I was trying to express which came first, the chicken or egg, and then Dominic says, well, which came first, the word or the actual object? Like when I see Peter's image that he's chosen, there's the object, and which came first, the word or the object? In that case, the word came first, the word as in the designer of that object. They had to write down the specifications. They went through lots of words to finally bring it to life, and then they labeled it, the name of the object, the brand and model and everything. So in that case, the word or the design, the thinking process came first, and then it was designed and created. And well, that could speak to that there's a God because it had to be created, and then God would have had to have used words to create the universe. What do you think?
Sure. We use words like, and hear the word, after thoughts. What comes after thoughts? Spoken words and the written work. Now, were you born to read or write? No. See, even the English language has 5 degrees within it. Speaking it is 1 degree, reading is another, writing it into it, hearing it, and having thoughts. Now, a person will go to university to get 1 degree and practice it maybe for another 20 years. That's 1 degree. A guy that tells me he's a 33-degree Mason, I said, you're still a child. You just don't know yet, because I'm still a child. I'm here to learn all the different degrees. Now, some people can change the word to degrees to modalities, crafts. You know, a person that says, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher. Okay, teacher of what? Are you going to intercede somebody and say, listen, I'll help you with your ailments, but you smoke. Okay, what's smoking? The emotion, the energy with the feelings with smoking is usually grieving. Drinking, say you become dependent on alcohol outside of the chemicals, you're probably angry in some way. Now people could say, what about hemp? Because I don't like using the word marijuana. Hemp, well, it brings another flavor to it. Then you have to factor in your diet. You know, like some people will only look at a diet based on the physical, on the intake of the food. But what about your diet? Do you go out in the sun? Do you actually play with the different elements in there, like snow or cold? You know, people have actually done the study where you can cook an egg with a pan with ice as much as you can with fire. But again, we're not fully engaging in our potential. So then basically what we're talking about is our programs, our limited programs. So we're all working, well, not all of us, quite a few of us are still working on some window program that was like 40 years ago. Even if it existed 40 years, I'm pretty sure it did. Probably it just got presented publicly. It's like when we hear about nuclear war, it's about nuclear energy that they're talking about. Dare not ever go to an airport and see how they fuel a jet. And you're thinking, 5 minutes? You're just putting jet fuel in there. For what reason? Because there's other energy that's going on. But we don't get presented to that kind of stuff. Anyway.
Oh, here's some more chicken and egg kind of thing. In the chat, I posted the next 4, and it's trying to establish which one was first. If fire were, that's number 9, if fire were dependent on wood, already established, fire would be established again. Firewood also would be such even without fire. So where I'd have to think about that one. Number 10, if a thing A is established dependently on B, but if what it depends upon B is established also in dependence on that very thing A, what would be established in dependence on what? Oh, that's reminds me of the chicken and egg. If one depends on the other, well, which one is the real one that that would be the source of both of them? I don't know. Number 11, how can a thing A, which is established dependently on B, be dependent on B when A is not established? If one asks, how can establishment be dependent? It is not reasonable for it, A, to be dependent. There is no fire that is dependent on wood. What? There is also no fire that is not dependent on wood. What? There is no wood that is dependent on fire. There is also no wood that is not dependent on fire. Maybe it's saying if that were the case.
See, Jaro, where the dependency comes is because somewhere along the line we've been sold goods on independent, where that whole 4 things that you did is about interdependence. They're interdependence of each other. Now, esoterically, unless you really want to get a little bit deeper, there's the essence to things. So now, things is what you see outside. Those are things. But and you can call it object, you can call it material, but then what's the essence to those things? Because those fire and wood, they're interdependent of each other. But yet it gives you the illusion of oneness, let alone duality. But they're just interdependent. It's like most of us, we're interdependents. We're people that live in civilized situations like cities. Most of us aren't going to be growing our own crops, making our own clothes. And even if you are going to say, listen, I'm going to be a little bit more of a sovereign being, I'm going to grow my own crops. Now you're going to be interdependent with nature. Now, you could be independent from within, but even that's something that I would have to pose as solely as a possibility, because am I going to say that my left arm is interdependent with my right arm? Now, we could probably do some neurology and say, okay, there are certain things in your brain that triggers things, and I'm using the word brain. I'm not using the word mind, because the mind's a little bit different than what we call the brain. That's why we have many words like government, entertainment, Latin, because it's the mind. But what is it? Again, we could pose all kinds of possibility, but once again, does one medicine work for everybody? No. Does one language work for everybody? No. So therefore, then we have to use that template then. We have to consider there's going to be many ways to view things. And it wouldn't be appropriate to say, well, my religion will bash your religion. Well, that doesn't prove nothing about your religion, unless you want to say that your religion does nothing more than bash other religions. Same with state. Same with science. You know, we're still under the premise that gravity is still a theory. Why? Because a lot of people theorize about what word we're going to use for it, and they bashed each other. It doesn't mean the one that's standing is actually factual. It just means it's a theory. I would lean more towards what we call magnetic. Me being an electrician, I've experienced high energy. I didn't mean to do it on purpose. I've experienced 347 voltage, and what it does, it pulls me. And when I pulled away, I felt heat. So then I can maybe through my own experience say, if I was going to guess, because that's all I could do, that maybe we live in a magnetic realm where people have talked about electricity under us as much as above us, but we're using the language that we know to describe it. Maybe a generation down the road are going to say, I can't believe those guys use those words, ego, the self, computers. And it'll get changed because once, say, the language moves, say we go back to a dynasty and we start using Mandarin or we use Cantonese, then next thing you know, or maybe those languages will die too, and then it morphs. It morphs into another dialect. And then people are going to look at English and say, we don't even speak that anymore. I know Mandarin is the number one language in the world spoken, but the number one commerce language is English. Now that's doing some, what we call many REs, research. Remember, that's why we have those words here, because we're using this language. Anyway, going on again, guys. Sorry.
What do you think about fire and wood? So what when I think of fire, it's just amazing that it has flames and then they disappear. And then when you touch it, it's very hot. And then if you remove the wood, it dies, it goes away. So I could maybe conclude that at least fire depends on wood. But I wouldn't say that wood depends on fire. It depends on water and the seed and the sun and the soil, things like that. But fire, it's something else. I guess it has to have the right temperature and the right fuel and a spark, things like that.
I would like
And
to
then
add
I posted.
something. Yeah, the way I understand here the relationship between, the firewood, is it similar with like the chemical elements? Like you have hydrogen and you have oxygen. Two molecules of hydrogen plus one molecule of oxygen would give you water. So like carbon dioxide, is it like that? So because I remember this one, there used to be a game, like a video game, wherein you're the alchemist, and then your goal is to create more, elements, like you get more points. So I just remember that one. So is it like sulfur and something, you mix it and then it becomes sulfuric acid? So those things that you combine, it becomes, but if you separate this one, both elements are independent. But if you combine both things, it becomes another part of element. So I remember a show, it was by the Star Trek Voyager, and the title of the episode is Tuvix. It was they tried to merge Tuvok. There's a character called Tuvok there. It was a Vulcan. They are very logic, and Neelix is the one. And then something happened in their trans or teleportation or beam transportation beam. Suddenly, when they were fused together, they form into Tuvix. Now, in the end of that story, they had to separate the two so they could bring back Tuvok and Neelix. But Tuvix is trying to negotiate. What about me? I'm an independent person. Why would you kill me? Because in that effect, if they would want to separate both, and Tuvok plus Neelix would then be restored back to normal, whereas Tuvix was just by accident was combined together through the malfunction of their transport beam. So I remember that episode. It was from the Star Trek Voyager. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, there's some good episodes in Star Trek. I should I'd like to someday binge on Star Trek. Watch the whole seasons. I don't know how many there. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Yeah, philosophical and
Yes, it's 7 seasons. I guess the Voyager got the full 7 seasons. Other than, I
it's Star
think there
Trek
was a,
Voyager. Oh, okay.
yes, there was a franchise or of Star Trek. I think it was the Star Trek Enterprise. Like the captain there was played by Scott Bakula. I think they didn't get the 7 seasons because I think
Mm.
of the low rating from from the viewers. So they had to cut that into 4 seasons only. Yeah.
Wow.
Even the original season, which was played by William Shatner, he played the role of James T. Kirk at that time. Yes.
Mm.
Mhm.
That you mentioned Voyager. Is that a newer
Star Trek.
kind of
It was
Star
also
Trek?
Star Trek because Star Trek first came out. I think it was the original series that was in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
That was the brain, the idea of Gene Roddenberry, like that
Mm-hmm.
man can achieve like peace. There's no discrimination. There's no
In the
judgment.
Star Trek in the
Yes.
Star Trek universe, I watched the Next Generation and Voyager and
Yes.
all that. And
Mm-hmm.
DS9,
Mhm.
I'll come after. I don't really like the original series, and I'm too young
Mhm.
to be that. But I think the Star Trek is kind of what a lot of people hope to be utopian society, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that the wars, at least between the same species, members of same
Mm-hmm.
species, are gone. This is not to say the war don't exist between other species, because that's what Star Trek is. Well, it's not really Star Wars, but and it's also the most important thing is what it's a post scarcity civilization, meaning that if you want something, you will tell it to a machine called the replicator. It will make
Mm-hmm.
it out of thin air. So if you say
Wow.
I want coffee, you don't walk up, you don't get up from your bed, walk to a coffee maker and grind some coffee. You say, computer, make me coffee, and this thing just magically appears in front of you with the size, with the whipped cream you wanted, with the latte, espresso. It's the exact temperature you requested, just all within like a second. So so that
Mm.
so that basically is a demonstration of why a lot of things can be achieved, because in a post-scarcity society, there is no longer this competition,
Mm.
selfishness, neediness. Actually, believe it or not, economics is actually still a thing.
Mm.
So even in Star Trek's world, where nothing's lacking and no warfare, there's still economics, which kind of surprised me.
Yes.
But then I realized that
Wow.
there's other species, so meaning you have to trade. And even though humans had the technology to replicate anything that they desired, there are still elements in the universe that they cannot replicate, because think about it logically. If you don't know the compound formula for something, you cannot replicate it if your machine never learned how to do it. So because of this, trade, money, and economics still exist.
Mm.
But really, warfare is very minimum unless a race attacks you and you have to self-defense.
Mm.
That's really about it. So people, and there's no
Wow.
jobs. There's really no jobs except for certain duties on a starship. Meaning, there's still engineers, doctors, and lawyers and counselors, and the captain, all that. But no one is working in the sense that they're working for a salary. That
Wow.
that that kind of concept is has been long gone in that society.
Amazing. Can you imagine that?
Yes.
So that script, that concept for for that series, that show, that required a lot of imagination, a lot of words arranged, a lot of writing, a lot of thinking, a lot of visualizing, a lot of understanding of history, of our past history too. Like, oh, there's been wars, there's been this, and we've had this system and that, and trade, and it's just extended into the future. But now we have gotten so that we need to have trade with other species. That's amazing. Or I hope it comes about maybe by imagining it so it will take us in that direction. And I
So
hope
the way
there's
I don't know if
easy.
Charles can
Mhm.
understand what I mean when I say this, but
Yes.
a lot of people mention the term Zen state, being in the Zen or flow state, like being in the flow state, as in your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit is completely in line with each other. There's no stress. You're just enjoying everything in the moment for the rest of your life. And I think that the flow state can only be achieved in a such in a such I don't want to use utopian as a word because it's very subjective, because your definition and my definition will be different. But in a post warfare, post scarcity society and world or universe,
Mm,
then I think human race and other alien species can truly enjoy the true flow or Zen state,
mm,
because there is no longer every day you wake up, I have to go to work just to earn some money, and that's not Zen state. That's not a flow state. That is doing
mm-hmm.
something that you have to, or else you will die of
It's
starvation.
like a slave state. We're in a slave state. That's what I feel like. I wonder if it's
Well,
possible
it's
to
it's it's
to be.
it's a different kind of slavery. You know, traditional slavery is if you leave, they will kill you or they will hang you. This one you can leave anytime you want. It's just that you will still die of lack of money.
Yes. Wow. Yes. We're in a neo slave state, or maybe modern slave state, and we're looking forward to a like what you say is uh, an environment where like you say that we can ask a machine to make us coffee kind of state, post scarcity state or era, or where, hmm, could that be possible?
Because I think only in this is just my theory. I'm not saying I am correct. And there's no way I can be the judge or the adjudicator for all of truth for humanity. But my theory is as long as there's scarcity in anything, it's a reason for us to fight.
Mm,
Wars, economy wars,
mm, mm,
you know, like there's like computer, cyber warfare, even like Bitcoin stock exchange collapse, economic recession. That all has to do with scarcity of goods. Yeah.
mm. And what if scarcity is required for commerce? Like if if a tribe get it manages to get everything it needs, it won't want to trade. It won't want to go outside its tribe to go seek others to have trade with or to have war against, to try to take over. And maybe trade involves a little bit of war to kind of have control of the market. Hmm. Wow, interesting. What do you think, Charles?
I guess like the way I understand what you said is like yeah, there might be a need to have this scarcity because so that it could motivate. Now, the question would be, we had here some politicians, they're already filthy rich from, like corrupting the taxpayers' money. But we thought of, oh, they already reached the status of, like wealthy status. But why would they still continue to rob people? They would still continue. So I was thinking, like, maybe is this part of human greed, or is it like what I've been seeing in the internet, those buzzword called the scarcity mindset, wherein you already had those wealth in your possession, but still in your mind you have you're programmed to feel and to think like you're still on the poverty status. So I don't know which of these two, but yeah, there are some people who's already rich. They have achieved everything. Even
Yeah.
I think in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they already fulfilled the until the
Hmm.
third level. But still, why would they still, like
Yeah.
rob or maybe do some
Oh,
businesses? Mhm,
that's a good
I
question.
think
I would.
I think my answer is because of
mhm,
human nature. I think
mhm,
even in a utopian society,
mhm,
at least my definition, post scarcity, post warfare. When I say post warfare, don't misunderstand. Don't
mhm,
confuse that as uh, post violence. That's a completely different thing. Post warfare just means that the majority of organizations, countries, empires have decided that warfare is really not good for humanity. But human nature is different in the sense that unless we genetically modify ourselves or the future generations, we will always have anger. We will always have bitterness. We will always have jealousy. And if we are going to, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because we have good emotions as well. We need to have good and bad emotions. If you just have one or the other, that's actually bad. But because we will have the negative emotions, there's always a chance for us to seek revenge, to sabotage others, and to gain a cult following. Let's say I become the next Hitler, but in 2,000 years later, and then I get people to follow me, and then we collectively kill a lot of people and destroy a lot of business. So human nature is not going to change unless you genetically modify people. So that's something
Uh,
that will always be the same.
yes, that's interesting. Charles saying that, like, why is there greed? And Peter saying it's human nature, and it's amazing that I guess I guess we can't imagine what it's like to be so filthy rich. Like, I saw a short on YouTube, or maybe it's on TikTok, that shows someone interviewing a billionaire, and asked him what his net worth was, and he admitted, yes, it's 40 billion, but yeah, I lost a billion, and it was hard. It was real hard for me when I lost that billion. So I'm actually under 40 billion. So he was kind of down on himself because he lost a
For
billion
for
somehow,
for, for
maybe
us most
trading or something.
average for us most average people, making over a million is hard enough. This guy's complaining about losing a billion.
Mind-boggling. I
So
guess when for
you
us
see the
when
different perspectives.
yeah, I guess for us, like, say we make 400 a week or something like that. So if we on in that week were to lose like $10, that's like for the is that equivalent? No, maybe yeah, $10 would be equivalent to a 40 billion versus 1 billion, 400 versus $10. It's like when we lose $10, we well, at least I do. I get really down on myself. Oh, I lost $10. Oh my gosh. So when they lose a billion, it's like we losing $10. We get upset.
it just occurred to me like if this is part of human nature, could it be possible that uh, a Buddhist monk or a Hindu monk would be or have able to achieve that control over the or overcome the human nature of greed, whereas they would just do the meditation and everything so that it could suppress this human greed? I'm not sure, but is that the solution for, you know?
Good question. Wow.
What's
It's
the question
amazing.
again?
If it's if greed is part of the human nature, and I've been seeing like testimonies from Buddhist monk. They said that they already have surrendered, or like the goal of gaining wealth, because they would want to serve, I mean, their time, and then I think they have the goal of reaching nirvana. So is have they found a solution to suppress that human greed
Mhm.
itself, or to extinguish the human greed, so that by constantly doing daily meditations or something? I don't know, I'm just curious about that one.
Are you asking, or
Yeah,
I could
it's just
paraphrase it as saying is that through through some kind of mental training, they
Mhm,
have been able, maybe not suppress, but at least catch themselves
mhm,
and say, okay, I have the emotion of of uh, of greed, and I'm working on eliminating it. So
mhm,
as it starts to rise, then I see, okay, if I pay attention to it, like be mindful of it, then
mhm,
maybe and figure out where does it come from from my desire. Okay, so maybe if I uh, reduce the desire, or maybe even if I get that object that I desire, then the desire is gone. So maybe that's why there's greed, because when the object of our desire is not there, then we desire it, and so once we obtain it, then the greed is gone, the desire for it is gone. So we're on a treadmill, never ending of wanting and getting. So the only way to overcome the wanting is to get it, to getting it. So still, a Buddhist or Hindu monk do have their desires, like they have to figure out where to live, and have their students be able to take care of them. So the if they're teachers, then they have to work on getting some traction, getting some groups of students that will listen to them on Zoom. Like I have a lot of uh, Buddhist masters that I get on Zoom, but in order for me to listen to them, I have to contribute something to them, to the organizer, a certain amount for a series of lectures, and a certain amount for donation. Well, they suggested donation, and I tell them, oh, I'm kind of poor, and so maybe can I do it for half or less, or like maybe do some work study. They gotta bring it down. So those teachers, those monks, or those people that have done a lot of study in what they're being a teacher of, they need to have a way of making a living. So they kind of get a manager to help them expose them on the internet, and bring students in. So they have desires. So I would think that even a monk uh, has, cannot eliminate it. I don't think there's any way to eliminate greed or desires in this plane. What do you think?
Well, I think it's, in that sense, Jaro, a little bit short-sighted, because it's not the desire or greed, it's the attachments to it. So now, is a person attached to poverty? Yeah. Suffering is not just about the resistance to things like pain, it's the attachment to things like comforts and luxuries. Now, if a
Mm,
monk says, okay, I'm not materialistic, I said, okay, so do you eat food? Well, yeah. Do you need shelter? Yeah. So you're still attached to the ideal, whether you're aware of it or unaware of it, that you need the material. So now, the ideal that non-attachment, if Buddha lived in this era, whoever they were or wasn't, he would probably have to struggle like the rest of us. Now, some people will say, but I live in comfort. I said, okay, and only time would tell for you, if there's such thing as time. If given the opportunity to give all that up, would you actually give it all up? The question might be why. I said, no, that's your defense now and your justifications. This is the game we play. It's not about killing anything. It's just being aware of it. Be the observer of it. Now, it's kind of like a double split experiment. Once you observe it, if it's meant to shift, it will shift. So now, unless you fully experience what desire is, can you fast for 40 days? Some people can. But the question would be for some, why would I do it? Why would you go to work for most of your life and then do a retirement or retired or whatever you want to talk about? You know, we have this connotation, we attach things to what we think is bad or good. Depends on the moment. If I'm a billionaire and most people are buying my product, whether I'm a nice guy or not, I said, it's business as usual. For the other guy that turned around and says, well, but I'm not, but it's not fair. I said, really? You've never made observation? We live in an age of information, so we can't use nishan. There's no way you can't say, I don't know. Well, we have wars, we have poverty, we have greed. Now, could I be a billionaire? I don't think I would even have the skill set. That's me being honest with the self. So now I get it when people want to, and when I say I get it, because I'm experiencing it myself to a certain point, but I'm also using my imagination to a certain point, where what is a monk? If he's truly disattached, then why are you wearing the robe? Why purple? You know what I mean? And I don't care if he's a monk, he's a priest, he's a doctor, he's a physician. I could tell a person that's okay, so you wrote a book. Why do you feel as though you need to stimulate the ego by saying your name, let alone you have a PH on it? Well, I want to be the best New York sales time book. I said, well, I know how that system works. If you're the only one that's producing the book or the few producing the book, because all those are orchestrated. Same in the music industry. You could be very talented as a musician, but other industries create all that other stuff, the concerts and all that. We're not an island by ourselves. So now the question would be, how does that work for you practically? How does it serve you when you're greedy? Now, some people can say, well, I'm not greedy. I said, okay, so let me understand this. You buy a car that you didn't make, you use fuel that somebody else has abstained for you, get for you. You go to a grocery store that somebody built, you buy things and you take things off the shelf and you use somebody else's money. So when have you ever been a sovereign being? We're not. Anyway, I went on.
What about the musicians? Like in order for them to create, or they discovered early on the really excellent musicians and songwriters and artists that became famous. They discovered early on that this was fun, what they were doing, so they kept wanting to do it even though they weren't making much money. And then they got a manager, and then they got put in places, and they got more and more people, and the word of mouth spread, and then they got on a big show on TV or whatever on the internet, and it exploded and it got bigger. And so their audience got so big that they couldn't even hear themselves. and so they got burned out, and they wanted to get out of it because they were too big for what they were like in the beginning. So they were inspired and motivated to share their music with others, and they had a communication between them and the crowd, the audience, their fans. And then they got too famous, and maybe they couldn't go to the crowds without feeling that there's just too many people, and the music is not coming out good live. So they'll just do recordings and make money off the records and things like that.
So Charles, I mean, sorry,
because I was
Gerald.
listening. I was listening to the story of Paul McCartney and Raven and on an interview on Hulu, and they were talking about the songs and how it was at the beginning and everything else. So it's very interesting, the process. But I was thinking that maybe at the beginning they just wanted to share their music and make a little bit of money at the same time to cover expenses.
But you know something, Gerald?
Imagine how it blew up. Yeah.
I was going to say,
Mm.
Jaro, well, who's more important, the masses or the guy that sings? Because even there's a few that actually create all those instruments. This is where the ego, when people watch movies like Game of Thrones, whatever, or they only see the main character, they don't understand what about all the things going behind it. So in this particular case, this is kind of like, do you hear noise of a tree falling in the forest? The tree in that case is you. You're the musician. Now, you didn't create the music, so you've been inspired to think, okay, I have a voice. But then what maintains you to continue doing it is because you'll get rewards, fame, riches. But really, once again, it's like there's people in the world, they're called lords, landlords. They're not owners, but they're landlords. But if most of us, if not all of us, no longer want to participate in supplementing their lands, then who has more power? It's the masses. Now, a guy could say, but I'm a singer. I said, did you create the instrument? No. Did you create the fans? No. So you're nobody. Now, in his little world, they're important. I said, but why are you trying to seek for outside recognition? Now, that is desire. That's greed. You just don't see it because you're pre-assuming that somebody that has lots of money is greedy, or what they do with it, or how they behave. It's still greed. Does it matter if it comes out of a person politely or very crusty? It's the message. And the message usually reveals you. When we live the way we do, where economy collapse or whatever, it reveals you. It doesn't make you. Most people are designed a certain way already, not realizing the culture. So now a guy that plays an instrument, who's more important? The guy that sings the song, the guy that produces it, the electrician that does the lighting set and all that, they all play an interdependent. But that's the ego not realizing if you're so fucking important, then go take your chance living out in nature. That's why we have things called civil wars, because the people that rule over us know that we're fucking idiots. And we validate it. Now, maybe it's a harsh word to say, but if something is broken, then it belongs to them. Now, a person can say, well, I don't belong to anybody. Really? Next time you go to the gas station, tell me where you're getting that gas from. Charles is wearing glasses. Did he make his own glasses? I'm just using that as an example, Charles. Did he make his own glasses? No. The shirt? No. This computer, this high-tech computer that we're on right now, did we make it? No. This is where when people say, well, I learned a craft. Did you make all the machines? No, I'm an electrician. But did I make all the apparatus? No, I'm doing Lego. I'm putting pieces together. Now, I could be of service to a person by hearing them. Okay, I got to follow certain codes. So as much as you want me to put a plug there or connect a motor this way, I got to tell you the possibilities. If I do it the way you want it, opposed to code, it'll burn up. Well, Dom, I want it my way. I say, okay, no problem. I'll do it for you, or I'll walk away. This is the whole concept of slavery and mastery. They both have to be conditioned. And once you realize who you are, you can't give that even if you wanted to. That's the illusion that you play in. So now, as you bring in the example of the singer, you're talking solely from Jaro's point of view, perception, how you perceive a guy that's a billionaire. That's all you can do. Because if you truly understood how to live the way they live, there's families. There's a lot of people that do a shitload of work involved in all that kind of stuff. Slavery was cumbersome for the rich, because now you have to feed them and you also have to shelter them. Now what they do is, we'll print a piece of paper that's valueless. That's what fiat currency means, because people don't realize they still barter. We don't. And even now, what craft are you going to get? I can't go to the grocery store unless my friend owns a grocery store and say, listen, I'll exchange my service for some of your food. No, Dom, it's of no interest to me. Give me that piece of paper, or give me some sort of digital system. People understand when they start putting credit system to the digital system. And then they reward you by saying, okay, Dominic, you just worked a week as an electrician. You got a 30-day expiry date on that. And I'm okay with that. But I'm the kind of person, I want to understand the rules. That's all I want to understand. I could play chess with anybody that knows how to play chess. I'm not concerned about winning or losing, but I do understand the rules. I know what the pieces can and cannot do. This is why when you talk about that, Jaro, you're talking from a very narrow perspective. You can't see, but you want to inquire the cause. But meanwhile, you don't even know some of the parts. And this is not an offense to you, Joe, because we're all included in all that kind of stuff. I could ask Peter all kinds of private questions, and I would say, Peter, it's fucking way beyond my fucking scope, but at least I'll hear you. And I'm just using you as an example. Sorry, Peter, because of the industry that you're in. Anyway, go ahead, Joe.
Yes, and I'd like to share the last few points on this fire versus firewood. Number 13, fire does not come from something else. Fire also does not exist in wood. Likewise, the remainder of wood has been shown by gone, not gone, and going. Number 14, wood itself is not fire. Fire is also not something other than wood. Fire does not possess wood. Wood does not exist in fire. That fire does not exist in it. Number 15, through fire and wood is explained without exception all the stages of self in the grasp, and at the same time, jugs, cloth, and so on. So everything can be explained in the similar way. Number 16, I do not think those who teach the identity or difference of self in things are wise in the meaning of the teaching. Hmm. 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 I think he's trying to say that everything is interdependent, interconnected. Nothing can depend, can exist by itself. And even the things that we create, they depend on our words that we label them. So it seems like we're creating our reality using words, like we label things. But then how do animals create their reality if they don't use words? Maybe they use images. What do you think, Charles? Hmm. Hmm. So,
I am thinking, Harold, could it be that the animals, like the insect, it has an antenna. It sends out
mm,
something that we do not comprehend itself. So maybe that's how they communicate, but not through words. I'm not so sure about that one. They have an antenna, right? Like those cockroaches, grasshoppers, those antennas. It's like
mm,
I remember this was shared to me by the pest control people that
mm,
they used to spray houses here in our country, the termites. They said that their antenna works like a cell phone. They communicate right away to those other workers. So those ants would, or the bees, the from the hive, they have some sort of a communication. Maybe we might not be able to comprehend. And I also remember there was a friend of mine who shared to me like, could it be that those ants has their own world that we see them, but they don't see us. So is it like we also exist in something in this world, but we don't see, for how do they communicate itself? So that's the question. So what we have is only the words. That is our tools, because our brain was built or developed in this manner. So I guess so.
yes, like uh like for the ants
Mhm,
or whatever,
mhm,
we're like gods to them. They don't
mhm,
see us. And so in the same way, we we have some superior beings above us that we don't see, and they're just adjusting life on earth for us,
mhm.
and we don't even see that it's happening. That's something to think about. Something I sometimes.
Again, that's the
What do you
assumption,
think?
guys, that they actually see us. Like a lot of that's guessing game. Now, a lot of it's done on patterns. We're doing patterns that cats can see only in shades. You know what I mean? And they do a certain kinds of testing to confirm or not to confirm that. Again, most of us wouldn't even know how wireless works. let alone how a lot of our apparatus comes to be. So it is a clever game. You know, you can ask the whys, why were they created, and then the hows. That's very scientific. When people start asking whys, think about children at 2 years old, whys, they're asking philosophy. Now, the apprentice at that time is actually the parent. So now the parent says, son, I really don't know how to answer that question. Okay, well, then I'm going to, parent, hopefully I'll go find somebody that can give you that information. You know, this is why we have the difference between elders and elderlies. Elders are wise people. What do you mean, son? I worked 30 years. And what did you learn, Dad, from working 30 years? It's not all cracked up to what it is. Oh, okay. So now what would you have done differently if there's such thing as differently? Well, I would have spent a little bit more time enjoying my life, maybe having more of a balanced life. Sounds nice in theory. You know, now for other people, when you hear the nice story, I have a week left to live. I'm using hypothetical situation. And then they say, well, Dominic, if, you know, I only have a week left to live, I would enjoy my life more. I said, no, let's look at your patterns. What did you do for the 60 years? I was a workaholic. I said, so why would it change now? This is where people forget about the concept of truth. It's about being honest with the self. Not being honest with other people. When I tell other people, say, fuck, I don't give a shit if you're honest with me or not. I'll see patterns in all of that. Why? Because I see patterns in words. Now other people could turn around and say, well, Dominic, what happened if I don't speak words? I said, we also have body language. Now, somebody will go to school and get indoctrinated in psychology and sociology. It's fine. That's fine. But if a person is intuitive, insightful, listen to the words, intuitive, insightful, intelligent, information, it's all in words.
It's like being in the world and not of it.
Yes. And what does that imply? What does that imply? That's more leaning towards be the spirit, experience the material, but don't be it. Because if you do, you're going to get attached to it. And getting attached to it, yes, you're allowed to have those moments. I've lost my loved one. I've lost my, you know, even the concept of a pet. Think about the word pet. We make people a pet. We're so domestic. The only species that we can understand as a pet is a dog, because a cat is still wild. Think about nature. Nature's wild and untamed. But what does nature have as a boundaries? Laws. Light, air, wind, and space. But most people, water, or not light, air, wind, and space. Because what we give each other is policies. I can't control the boundaries of water, but I can actually do things with clouds. Me personally, other people say, well, Dominic, I don't believe in that shit. Okay, I'll show you. Now you know, but it doesn't mean you have discernment. No different. I can't run like certain people, let alone comprehend. Like I remember when I used to do it, I was good with numbers in my head. My wife is, she went, first time she introduced me when I was like 30 years old. No, sounded out phonetically. What the heck is that word? And I was in the schooling system and I didn't even know what it meant. You know, this is where we don't appreciate each other's craft. We're too busy combating each other, like thinking everything's a sport. Got to prove that I got to win. I said, okay, so you're only caught up in outcomes. You watch a sporting event, you see the outcome, but do you see all the parts, what those athletes or gymnasts have to do, or those tennis players have to do? It's a tough game that they have to be in there. Oh yeah, but I think they sold out. I said, haven't we all sold out? I'm chasing money like the next guy is. Why? Because I've given up my sovereign being for convenience. Does it matter if I have $1 trillion or I have $1? Anyway, I went on again. Hi, Joe.
I'm being in the world and not of the world. I feel like being of the world, I'm being a slave to the world. Being in the world is more like I know that I'm a slave. And so maybe that'll ease my mind, knowing that I'm a slave of the world.
Maybe. What happened if you're what happened if you're a master? You know, you hear stories about people in certain kind of teachings about ascended masters. Well, what do you do? What do you need when you have an ascended master? You have to have descended slaves. They're not they're not ever question your master. You know, this is the whole wonderful world. If I talk to the Dalai Lama, I would say, fuck, I don't give a shit who you are. If I can't question the shit that you talk about, then it's worthless to me. To me. Now, other people could turn and say, well, it's worthless to me. I said, so when did you give up your own self? because we're supposed to be responsible for our own vessels. The rest of it, it's to me, and this is my projection of, it's a bonus outside of that. Am I a hypocrite? Yeah. Am I an honest person sometimes? Yes. Am I a clever person sometimes? Yes. I never once said I'm any of. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's 10 a.m.
Oh, we gotta go.
Now it's time to take a meditation for 1 minute. We're going to meditate for 1 minute, and we're gonna starting now. Okay, let's all meditate. Thank you. Thank you for meditating with me. I feel better now.
What did we meditate on, Jaro? Like honestly, what did we meditate? What did you pray? What did you, before you went into a state of peace, silence, what did you meditate on? Just out of curiosity. It's like making a wish. I know it may be rude on my part to ask, what did you meditate? I already know, Charles, sorry, Jaro, you already know I don't do guided meditation. I think that's a moronic fucking thing. But anyway, what did you meditate on? Joe, remember, you're talking to a guy that's an agitator. I'm not here to sell you pleasantries. What did you meditate on?
I meditated on meditating, that we were meditating. I say, wow, everybody's quiet and meditating.
Okay. Well,
And then
okay, good enough. Good enough. A bullet to the head will give you that same result, but I'm not that kind of person. But again, I'm asking questions. A lot of people don't like to challenge themselves. So for me, I have to be the idiot and say, okay, so what did we meditate on?
Yeah, but there's a lot of things going on in my mind.
No, I know.
Quiet my mind.
Well, it's not about quiet.
I was thinking, and
organizing it.
Maybe instead of using the word meditate, we should say, let's have a mental pause. Put our minds in pause if we can.
I've already told you before. You have a gifted mind. Somebody's probably never aided you in how to harness it. There's a lot of people that have gifted minds. They just don't know how to channel it, and what they do is it becomes nothing but noise, but they don't know how to organize it. And the fact that you're born under the Virgo sign, you should hopefully be able to categorize things. Don't worry about assessing it as much as gathering it first. Think about a person that actually does research. A lot of times you have to gather the information. Don't start assessing it as you're gathering it. Not all people have that ability. So for you, you're meditating.
Time.
Okay,
bring out time again.
Bring out the box. Bring out the box.
To get some wisdom from the jar of wisdom.
Cookie jar.
The cookie jar. I put my hand inside the cookie jar and take out something that's very wise. A quote.
Let's take one cookie. Just take one cookie. Don't take a bunch of cookies.
Let's see. Oh, let's see what this one says. Let's see. Everybody, whether rich or poor, educated or uneducated, has the potential to lead a peaceful, meaningful life. We must explore as far as we can how that can be brought about. Oh,
It's always the potential. We always have the potential, because if honestly,
oh,
I know you guys were using it earlier, if monks actually perfected it, then what are we looking at then? We're looking at the potential from our perspective. We're always looking at it from our point of view. So in this case, whether you're rich or poor, small or tall, I'm going to add the word small or tall, woman or a man, dark skin or light skin, we all have the potential. Now the question is, what is the potential for oneself? Hopefully I would think so first. And then we can actually spew over, like, filling up the water jug, and then we can share with other people. But for most people, they're just struggling. I can even say that about myself. So I'm still experiencing the human thing. I would never tell anybody I perfected anything. I would be consciously lying to myself.
Is okay. Just curious. Is the potential being suppressed or buried by our setting of expectation in life? Like we have the potential, yes, but if we set the bar too high, does it kill the expectation? No, the potential itself. So we would be stopping ourselves to achieve that potential. Is this what's happening?
For some people, Charles,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, some people, I can only say some, that's overgeneralizing, but some people, it's unaware. Some people ignore it. Other people, they probably are designed to set the bar pretty high. And then other people, we have old teachings where I think a lot of it's watered down so they feed the masses. It's like if you met the most intellectual being, how would you be able to gauge them without knowing that you're intellectual? So the potential is, like even now, we're using wireless device. I'm curious why we don't have electrical wireless device, but I might be picking up energetically. We do have it. It's just not presented to the masses because most people, they're not destructive as much as they become this entitled person. A lot of people, when they get technology, they figure it's my right. I said, no, that's not your right. It's not your right if you want to choose to be on somebody else's plane. That's a privilege. It's not your right to say, well, they should give us healthy food. No, that's a privilege. I don't think we even have rights. I think we have duties to the vessel that we're in. So the potential is, you realize it's all within you. Now, when it comes to other things such as the technology we have, I think we've been interfered with. So that whole concept of Star Trek, if we went based on what it says, we don't interfere with a species that's lesser than us. This is why we have stories of the fallen ones. They come down here to interfere because they want to have their cake and eat it. It'll be like me and you, Charles. We're older, and then we try to take advantage of young little babies. Oh, well, I'm smarter than you. Well, no, you're still a baby compared to me. So that's our potential as a species. One of our major potentials, we've never worked collectively. We've allowed, and maybe that's the whole idea of tempting us with different cultures, different religions, different state. When a person says, I'm a Hebrew, I'm a Jew, I think you just validate division. Because they say, I'm a Hebrew. No, you're not. You're a human being. Well, I'm dark skinned. I said, no, you're not. You're a human being. Now, we play many personas. You hear somebody say, well, I'm a doctor. I said, okay, you just told me your persona. I'm an electrician. You just told me your persona. I'm a father. You just told me your persona. That's not who you are. Well, then what am I? I said, that's the fool's journey now. Because then you have to deduct all the things that you're not. I'm not the body. I'm not the thoughts. So now what is the potential to all of that? I don't know. If I set out on a journey that I already know my destination, then I'm actually not going for an adventure. I'm going for confirmation. That's why when people, they're already set, I have to have an answer. Well, then you're not really going there with a receptive mind. Forget about an open mind. An open mind is like opening up a dam. You could cause all kinds of grief to yourself. Have a receptive mind, have a clever mind, and then once in a while have an open mind. Maybe even have a narrow mind, even have a closed mind. But then you have to ask the question, then what is this thing we keep talking about, the mind? Again, I can only speculate, Charles, and I just did a lot of sewage words here where I don't really know what the potential is, but it does resonate when I hear myself saying it.
Scientists divide energy into two kinds, potential energy and kinetic energy. So kinetic would be like fire, and potential energy would be the firewood. It has energy. It's in a state of potentialness that it's not uh, visible, that it could turn into fire. So there's energy there. It's locked in.
Okay,
It's
so
a
what about damp wood?
potential.
Why? I mean, sorry, Jaro, let's go with
Damp
it.
wood.
What about damp wood?
Damp
Yeah,
wood,
damp wood.
as in
Oh.
wood that's got water soaked into it.
There's energy in that. There's energy in
There's
that.
energy in that, but
Sure it
now
is.
it can't start a fire.
No, but not the fire's out. That's just
Wet.
one application. Fire's just one application. Damp wood. What about a floating wood? See, do you see how energy works? We limit ourselves with either or, you know? So what about when you air out it, when the sun starts beating onto it and it dries the wood? Forget about firewood. It dries the wood. And then you start seeing termites on it. We're living in an ecosystem, but we're too busy trying to intellectualize these things, and which is fine, and you have to, but you have to use other receivers in your body. You have to be able to have an intuitive mind, and if you don't, you need to find
And
somebody that can
then-
listen. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
And then potential applied to persons. So when we say, oh, that person has potential, and that so we're suggesting that there's something inside them, some kind of energy that's locked in that hasn't been expressed yet. And so when we express it, then the potential has been realized. So so may all your potentials become realized. Potentials for greatness, potentials for goodness, potentials for peace of mind, potentials to overcome our greed, our attachment, to let go when we need to, like when we're on our deathbed. We want to have the ability to let go of our life and have a comfortable death, not be like, oh, greedy about life. Oh, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Put me on this, put me on that. Don't let me die. And then we suffer not a very good quality life. Maybe being brain dead. We want to let go of our life when it's no longer beneficial for us and for others. So, so may you have the potential to make wise decisions. No, you do have that potential, but may you realize it. May you, yes, have discernment to make the right choices versus the left choices. Well, if you want, if you know where you're going and you want to get there efficiently, I would say. So may those things happen, and when they happen, then your potential has come about, has become kinetic. Kinetic as in motion, emotion, energy and motion. I'm just riffing. It's about that time for me to say goodbye to all my friends and enemies and kind mothers, because I want to practice yoga today. So there's a yoga class that I'm going to on Saturday mornings. So I'm going to do some hatha yoga, and may that yoga bring about a peace of mind to maybe not suppress my attachments, but more like let them go. Maybe if I do yoga, all my desires will be met, or at least I'll be breathing better and be more relaxed and feel good and come out with more energy. Yes. Oh, what happened?
Okay. Oh.
Oh, oh. Dominic had to take off. Thank you, Dominic,
Anyway,
for your
okay.
entertaining conversation. And
And
yes, what were you gonna say, Charles?
and thank you, Jairo. If you, I think this is about to end. Anyway, I enjoyed the talk, and yeah, I missed out, the previous meeting because I had some important matter. But I enjoyed this talk. Like if I have the time and it doesn't conflict, it doesn't create any conflict with my, other activities, then I will do my best effort diligently attend your group, and I learned a lot of things also. That it's fun. Yeah.
Oh, yes, keep coming back because
Hmm.
maybe one day Joe in Canada will visit you in the Philippines.
Oh, yeah. Enjoy your trip
Joe
if
is a
you had the chance. Yeah, we had
world
lots.
traveler.
Hmm. We had some popular beaches here in our country, like it's white sand beaches. That's where most of the people or tourists, visits here in our country. They love the beach, but yeah, hope you can
And then
enjoy.
and then Joe can have a game of Vinci when he visits you in your home.
Yes,
What is it, 10 o'clock at night where you are now, Charles?
it's 11 in the evening, 11
11 o'clock.
16.
Well,
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
that background looks like it's a not it's a in
Uh,
midday.
it's a kitchen. I did search this image in Google, provided me with this image for Zoom background. So yeah, I had to use this one. This looks cleaner, brighter, and it looks nice.
Then your bedroom, actual bedroom, it's probably messy like mine. Mm,
Oh, yeah, I'm here in
it
the living room actually. Yeah, I can show you. Mine would be this. This is my background. My actual background is this.
oh, it's nice.
Mhm. This is the living room actually. So
Nice
I
living
had
room.
to use this. Yeah. There are some people because sometimes people come and go, so I wouldn't want to have the speaker be distracted. Sometimes they come and go, so sometimes it creates any distraction.
Mm,
Mhm.
wow.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a background.
Mhm.
Oh, maybe it's on my computer, not on the here. I'm using my phone.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you again, Charles. Thank you,
Thank
Joe,
you.
in Toronto, Canada, for visiting us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you
Mhm.
enjoyed it, Charles, and learned
Yes, I
something.
do. Thank you.
Well, we learned something from you. Mm,
Thank you.
I'm
see
doing
you
a
next time.
study on Texas English.
Oh,
Mm. Oh, you're in
So
Texas now.
you have to know how to use the word y'all.
Y'all,
And
you all.
you say y'all in Florida as well, Jairo, but I don't know if you know the correct grammatical usage of y'all. So if I was to use y'all in this group, I would be speaking to both of you. But if Dominic or I forget the other gentleman's name were still here, the proper use is all y'all.
Oh,
oh,
all y'all.
All y'all. So I just learned that. That's one of the things I'm learning in Texas. Proper
yeah.
Texas English.
See.
What's the difference? Is it more people? All y'all?
Yeah, if there's more than two people, you
Mhm.
use all y'all
See.
instead of everybody.
Oh, I did not know that.
Neither did
See,
I.
I
That's
learned
why
something
I thought
today.
it might have been interesting.
See.
And then, but then you would, the people in have had tremendous schooling would say, y'all are ignorant. You shouldn't say y'all.
They would say ignorant. It's a
Ignorant.
silent N in Texas. Ignorant.
Ignorant. Wow.
I'm
It's
making
another
a
English.
joke, of course.
Yeah.
Wow. All
Yeah.
right. I have to say goodbye. And I'll try to not be greedy today and be maybe more giving and things like that.
Yeah.
And maybe talk to the
Mhm.
person at the counter and say hello to people
Yeah.
more today.
Mhm. Yeah. And it was nice to learn about when you mentioned about is scarcity a part of abundance. That's a good point that it it really helped me to, to think about that. Yeah, it's part of it because without scarcity there would be no abundance, and people has to work for that.
Motivation for it. Maybe
Yes, I guess so.
people would have to be brainwashed into imagining that they have a need, so they go and buy stuff. Consumerism.
Yes, I yes.
So I gonna get my iPhone 15 maybe. No, I don't use iPhone. I'm gonna get my Samsung S23 Ultra. That's on my wish list. But that's too much though. It's beyond. It's more than I make a month. Okay.
How's your mother doing, Jairo?
Mm. Oh, she got out of the hospital. She had COVID-19, and she was there maybe 6 or 7 days, and she got out, and
Oh,
she's doing well.
oh, it's good. Good
Good.
to hear. Yeah.
Maybe I'll go see her this weekend.
Yes. I guess like the COVID currently is I think we had the Omicron variant. It's much weaker than, I mean, when you get that COVID, I mean, compared to the Wuhan variant, the parent variant earlier, I think there were lots of death in everywhere in parts of the world. Now I heard this explanation like the virus is an organism, just like us. We They also have the what we call the survival mode. Like we do find ways how we can survive or we can extend our life. So they said that the purpose of the virus is they are the parasite, we are the host. If they became so deadly and they attached to us as the host, and we just passed away too quickly, so they couldn't survive at the longer rate. Now what happened is they mutate, they evolve into something of a weaker form so that it could allow them to live longer, and it could go side by side with us as human. So it's like the effect would be like a common flu or a common cold. That's what I
Mm,
heard, but I don't have any scientific basis on that one. But this is what I heard from some of the people that I've been attending to some Zoom activity. This is from also a non-medical person. Yes, thank you.
mhm, mm. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Well, I'll have to say goodbye now. I'm gonna push the end button.
All right, thank
Bye.
you, thank you, Jairo. See you again. Bye bye.
See you.